Welcome back, everyone, to Lesser Known Operators. Today's guest is Christian Perez, a Green Beret from 1st Special Forces Group and author of Beyond the Assessment, Forging Strength, Overcoming Adversity, and Embracing the Warrior Mindset. I will have links to Christian's book in the show description. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, comment. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Christian Perez, welcome to Lesser Known Operators. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure to be on.
Right? Just, you get a one-off cold text message from somebody you don't know, and they got DOL at the end of the message, so you got to respond to that at least.
Absolutely. Oh, 100%, man. Absolutely. Just send it. Let's do it.
I thought I would get a lot more people telling me to go fuck myself when
Yeah.
sending out cold messages, and everybody's been so welcoming. I think that was just the thing in my head, you
Mhm.
know, that part of us that says you got to be quiet and you got to sit
Yeah.
and not make any noise. Just
Yep.
saying, oh, you don't want to message them because they're going to tell you no. And that's the biggest thing from getting out that I've had to teach myself is if you're not making any noise, nobody's going to hear you. And
100%.
obviously you're getting that because you got a book. Tell me, what's the name of your book?
Yeah. So it's called Beyond the Assessment. So pretty much, like you said, man. I mean, I think people are more inclined to talk about their experiences, especially when their experiences are of benefit to general society. Um, Not only that, but I think it's also therapeutic for guys, especially in our field of work. I think a lot of guys oftentimes spend their career doing so much, and then they never really talk about it. Not just, and I'm not saying necessarily brag about it, but they don't really just open up about some of the cool things that they did. And they're phenomenal experiences, man. They're unique experiences that like a lot of guys, a lot of people in the world will never actually get to do. And so with this book in particular, man, I didn't really dive too much into my personal experiences as to like what I did in group and all and what I did on deployment because I really didn't have a long time in group and on deployment. But I was blessed sufficiently to be able to have enough experience to talk about a couple of things. The large majority of what I focus on in my book is a few experiences throughout selection, how I even got on track towards the 18 X-ray program, which is what I am. I'm an 18 X-ray, kind of a weird 18 X-ray. I can go into more detail about that, but an 18 X-ray nonetheless. Um, I talk about those experiences, and then I talk about one experience in particular on deployment, which was when I had my first combat casualty, and kind of how that went, and some of the things that I learned. Primarily, again, tying it back to the Q course and how I applied it to there. And ultimately, at the end of it all, it's pretty much just it's how those experiences in the military have taught me resilience, leadership, uh, tenacity, discipline. All these different virtuous characteristics that are applicable to really anyone outside of the military. But I tie it back to that. And on top of that, what I also try to do is kind of help guys out in regards to finding purpose after getting out of the military, which I know is, it's become kind of like a common talking point, but I think it's one that, needs persistent harping on. You can never remind someone too much, to continue to seek purpose, to continue to strive for excellence. And that's kind of what I try to do in my book, man. And at the very, very tail end of it, I write a letter to my son, who is pretty much sort of like the sort of ultimate inspiration underlying the entire premise and purpose behind the book. He was sort of the catalyst that kind of drove me to finally do the thing that I've always talked about doing and wanted to do. Um, the reality is, I think it's close to like 98% of people in the world always, will say something along the lines of like, I want to write a book, but it's a minuscule amount of individuals that ever actually do. And so when I became a father, that, that became sort of like that last push that, hit my threshold. I'm like, okay, I got to do this, if not for me, to leave a legacy for my son, to set an example for him to look to me as the type of individual that will say he'll do a thing and actually do it. Yeah, it is a lot of that missing, but that's generally the premise of my book, man. It's a pretty short book. It's one of my friends kind of characterized it as like the 5 hour energy version of a motivational book. It's just a quick, uh, couple hour read, and ideally, somebody will feel inspired to actually do something after reading it.
No, absolutely, right? I mean, it's a great first step to get something out there and to
For
actually
sure.
do it. Like that's what I say with this podcast. There's 5 million podcasts in the world, right? But
Hmm.
50% of them don't have more than 3 episodes. So you get past that threshold and you're in the top
Yeah.
50% of all podcasts. And then the next break is 10 episodes. And then the next break is 50 after that. So and you just keep climbing and just keep chipping away at it. Like I just woke up 60
100%.
days ago and I was like, well, I think I'm going to start a podcast today, honey. And then I went out and got a mic, I didn't have enough for a monitor. So I bought a little 40-inch television and I
Yeah.
set my little seat up here. I'm grabbing shit from around the house. And that's what it's about, man. Make it happen.
That's
And
awesome. And see, yeah.
you gotta, because that's my listeners. I'd say this a lot. This real torture is going to be when you're too old to go after the things you want to do, and you'll look back, and
100%, man.
then you'll be weighed down with all of the regret and the
100%.
guilt of all the things you didn't do. I wish I would have gone to
Yeah, dude.
selection. I wish I would have
Yeah.
done this. I wish I would have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk
No, you're
about
absolutely right.
guys, you know, want to. They don't want to talk about their experience, or when they do talk about it, they minimize them a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because I'll get guys on here and they done crazy shit all around the world, and they'll just throw something out there as if it was just a normal Thursday. We invaded Afghanistan on a Thursday, and it was kind of chilly that day. Wait, let's back up there, sir.
Yeah.
Can we go?
Yeah, man.
So that's one thing in special forces, they get on you right away, right? You're always being assessed, and your
Mhm.
reputation means everything. Is that the impression you
100%.
got right out the gate?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually how I open the introduction to my book. Is it's this memorable quote that I distinctly remember. One of the cadre members told us right after we finished selection. We all got our memorandums, pretty much saying that we got selected, and everybody's excited, everybody's ecstatic. And then that last sort of like that, that tethering you back to reality. It's like, hey, just because you graduated, or correction, just because you were selected, does not mean that this is the end of the road. Like you're always being assessed. Like it starts now. You know, again, applicable to the real world. Like perception is reality on a regular basis, on a daily basis. The impression that you set everywhere you go, will matter. Interaction that you have with people will obviously matter. And I think everybody that's perhaps your listeners is well aware of that. But again, the book is less intended for like, you know, guys. I mean, not that it's less intended, but it's primarily geared towards driving a point home that a lot of people maybe already know, but it just needs a constant reminder, if you will. And that in and of itself, the you're always being assessed portion is something that like I think it's good to kind of uh it's a sobering reality. It's a sobering thought that you can carry with you on a daily basis and can ultimately sort of like push you to strive to be better. That much more, even if it's just 1% better. But at the very least, knowing that having that in the back of your head, you're always being assessed, bro. And frankly, as a parent, that 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 point was driven home infinitely more because my quote unquote assessment may not be so obvious right now that my kiddo is he's not even 2 years old yet. He's about to be two, but not 2 years old yet. But it is wild how much he's actually watching, how much he's actually absorbing, how much he's actually learning. Um, instances throughout my day where I don't suspect that he's like listening or paying attention. He'll be kind of off in the corner playing with his toys or whatever, and I'll say something and he'll immediately repeat it off in the middle of nowhere. So clearly, he is observing, he's learning, and it's just like, man, it kind of puts that sort of mantra and takes it to another level.
Yeah, Alexa's listening to you, your phone's listening to you, and your
Oh, dude,
child all
everybody,
the time.
Big Brother for sure.
Yeah, that
Yeah, dude,
I don't know. I
absolutely.
thought of some otters the other day, and now I get reels about them. That's all I get. So that's pretty wild. I can't believe the technology
It
behind that.
is, man.
So take me
100%.
back, man. So
Yeah.
how old were you when you joined?
Oh man, so let's see. I was in my early 20s, probably 22, 23 around there,
Okay.
when I really started. So I guess we're talking about sort of my history in the military and kind of what I wanted to do. Ever since I was like in middle school, I knew that there was some particular allure towards the military. I didn't know exactly what it was, like how I wanted it. I'm a middle schooler. I didn't have anybody that was in my family that was in the military. No one has served before me. No one had even gone to college. So I was sort of a first generation in multiple facets of my life. But I knew it's what I wanted to do. And, I was blessed to have parents who emphasized a lot on education and they wanted me to go to a college preparatory school. So they put me in a private school as I was growing up. There, I kind of voiced my opinion about wanting to go to West Point. I did not end up going to West Point, but I also didn't know how to go to West Point. I had no idea, man. It was just like aspirations, little things here and there where it was just the military was just
If you don't go
the
into high school knowing how to get to West Point, there's almost no chance of you getting there.
absolutely, man. Absolutely. And that's the kind of thing that now I have a better understanding of that, how that actually functions, how that actually works. And so like if my son ever decides that that's what he wants to do, now I can help him do that. But that's generational progress, if you will. And that's what's wonderful about the American dream. But not to get all, political in that regard, it is what's wonderful about it, man. So I definitely like I'm just glad that I have the opportunity now to, if my son wanted to follow that path, I can steer him in the right direction.
Yeah.
Anyway, going back and kind of where I was at. So high school, I knew I wanted to go somewhere in the military. I didn't know exactly how to start. Finally, I get to college. I go to Boston University. I think actually I was watching one of your recent videos, and one of the guys actually expressed a story that was pretty similar. I ended up going into the ROTC program at BU. Had a great time there, man. Learned a lot about this. Just I learned a lot more about the regular Army isms, which 100%, man, it helped a lot when I got to the Q course, and when I got to selection, because it wasn't my first time being exposed to it all. Now, granted, it's absolutely not the same thing as, being in a regular unit or anything like that. But what I did to kind of like compensate for that was while I was in ROTC, I did what's called the simultaneous membership program, which pretty much made me uh, go into a guard unit, a National Guard unit out of Massachusetts. It was a Charlie 181 infantry. So I was there while I was going to college. So when they had drill, I had drill. When they had their 2 week period in the summer where they were, where they were, doing their FTXs and whatnot, I was there with them. Uh, so that gave me more so of a realistic exposure. I decided I didn't want to commission. They wanted me to commission into the Guard. That was during the Obama years. Yeah, that was during the Obama years. There was a significant drawdown of the military. The order of merit list was absolutely ridiculous to go active duty, especially the active duty infantry officer. And I was just like, okay, you know what? Like what I really want to do, and that was what I was studying at BU was health science. I really wanted to practice medicine. I loved medicine. That had always been my sort of secondary passion, military and medicine, and I wanted to coalesce the two. How I went about doing that after deciding that I didn't want to commission into the Guard was the 18 X-ray program. I didn't know too much about it, but when I did find out about it, I immediately went to the recruiter. That was around 2015 that I went there.
What did you
So I
know
would have been
about it?
about well, I knew that it was pretty much so. Okay, so because I was in the Guard, because I was at SMP, I had to do a conditional release, right? So I was in the Guard and I wanted to go active duty. The Guard had to let me go first in order to go
Yeah.
active duty. So I knew enough about it where I understood that it was a program that pretty much takes you from civilian to special forces. Um, I knew you had to do the Q course, I knew you had to do selection, so on and so forth. But the minutia that happens in between all those phases and what goes on, I have absolutely no idea, man. Like, and that's kind of where they get that's kind of where they get you. Suffice it to say, I did my conditional release from the Guard. That was approved. I ended up going to just regular pipeline. I did really well at basic. I got distinguished honor grad out of basic, uh, airborne school, then off into the pipeline. But yeah, man, it was kind of a weird path to get there. I was just happy that I got some of the regular Army isms, not quite regular Army experience, but regular Army isms through ROTC, through the SMP program, so that way when I actually got to selection and to like, none of it was like particularly brand new. And I had also seen some of the suck where I was like, this is believe me, you want to stick to the soft side of things. Like this is the way to go to avoid some of like the less than ideal situations that you can find yourself in like the regular Army for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely lost on the X-ray program is the knowledge that you don't know how good you have it. You don't know
God.
because, when you're standing in formation on a Sunday getting yelled at
Mm-hmm.
because the person in charge of you wrecked their car, you go,
Yep.
how did this happen? The recorder didn't tell me about this. I didn't know that I would get in trouble for people that are in charge of me getting in trouble. So, yeah,
Yep.
that's
Oh yeah,
untrue.
man. The whole shit rolls downhill. You learn that real quick.
Yeah, being a private in the army is terrible, but not as bad as when I have guys that are from Ranger Regiment on here that were private in Ranger Regiment. Like, oof,
Oh
man,
yeah.
I
Yeah,
had it
yeah, yeah,
easy.
yeah.
I
Dude.
had it easy
Yeah.
being a private compared to that shit.
Yeah, man. Hearing those guys' stories, man, especially before they get their tab, is like, oh, bro.
Yeah, they say the one guy today, he said it doesn't get any better until you get that tab. It's just shitty the whole time.
Yeah, man. And I guess to a certain degree it makes sense. I understand. I understand the premise, and in a way, it's also something that kind of like creates that bond, right? Because you've all sort of gone through the suck together. You've all experienced the just terrible, less than ideal circumstances. You know what it's like. You've kind of made it through, and it makes it so that you've actually achieved something, despite the fact that it's sort of unnecessarily inflicted in some cases. But at the very least, at the bare minimum, it helps to kind of bring you together as a cohesive group and in a shared culture, if you will.
Oh, it does make an indestructible bond amongst everyone in the unit, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. I'll watch every once in a while, 2 weeks in hell or whatever will pop up, and I'll watch it and I'll go, man, that looks like it sucks. I wouldn't want to do that shit.
Right.
And I already did all that
Yeah.
stuff. It's over. Never
Yeah.
going to do it again. But I'll go, wow, that looks like it sucks. It would have been easy
Yeah.
back then, but now I'm like, oh, fuck all that. I don't want to do that. That looks way too hard.
Dude, the number of times that I watched that before going to selection, it just to just at least mentally prepare myself, like just through osmosis, I was cautiously optimistic that I would get some sort of like that resilience. That's just like, oh my God, man. But it at the very least painted it illustrated some of what it was like, something. Because that's the thing, right? It's like you never know until you're actually there. Like the experience, it really is a unique experience. Nothing to prep you for selection, I don't think. But it, at the very least, gives you a sneak peek into like, okay, kind of what to expect.
Yeah, it's everybody sees it differently. The way I was prepped for selection was I had to go twice because I hurt myself the first time. So first time it sucked. Second
Yeah,
time it
yeah,
was
yeah,
just I felt like I wouldn't say that. I felt like I was cheating. I knew exactly what was going to happen, when it was
yeah.
going to happen, what was going to happen to the people, how they were going to act. And then, the
I
only
see.
thing I had to really depend on myself for was the land nav and got
Yeah,
through that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I dumped everything into selection. Like that was the top of the mountain for me. And then it kind of
yeah,
all I felt better about the court after there.
yeah.
But yeah, that was the high stress point for me and the whole project was selection. The
For
rest
sure,
was
dude.
it kind of just I rose to the occasion, I guess, every time.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
how I did, but I just did.
yeah, man. And I'll tell you, at least one of the things that actually kind of helped while I was there, this kind of ebbs and flows through different classes in the Q course, or even prior to. But we were told, at least my class and some of the classes before and after ours, were totally oblivious to what student company was. I don't know if you've heard too much about student company, but it's sort of like that phase in between for X-rays between like the prep course and
Mhm.
actual selection. You're kind of like in limbo. You're just waiting to go to selection.
Okay.
Holy smokes, man. Like when we were going, that was like waiting out. Like
Oh, really?
if you made it through student company, oh yeah, 100%, man. Dude, it was just constant, constant, like from the cadre, like just relentless. Like we would hear sterilized uniforms, and it was just like, oh boy, here we go, here
Yeah,
we go, like to
everybody
the button.
calls stuff different and it changes. The
Yeah.
X-ray program sucks and whatever. And then we have a saying on this show. It's no one likes X-rays except for X-rays.
Yeah.
And but yeah, but when you guys got to selection, everybody was good. Like you guys definitely got the shit beat out of you before you got there to selection, where everyone that's been on here I've talked to that was an extra, they said selection was like a time off because nobody was fucking with you.
Yes.
All they did
Yeah.
was write the shit on the whiteboard,
Yep.
and there's nobody, smoking the shit out of you or telling you got to do this or do that. So you guys were actually pretty chill.
And that's why I appreciated, sort of again the suck in student company because it really did sort of kind of at the very least inoculate you to the stressors to that type of stressor. But yeah, for sure, once you actually get to selection, it's just like a totally different ballgame in that regard. Like the cadre kind like they seem way more. It's more like big boy rules, even at selection, which sounds kind of like wait what? But even there, it really is. It's just like hey, here's a task, make it happen. If you can't make it happen, you're clearly not meant to be here. It's that
Yeah,
simple.
task,
Like
condition, and standards. Figure it out.
that's it. That's
That's
it.
all the direction. Take all notes from the whiteboard. Or
That's it, man. Yeah.
were you in the tents or were you in the?
No, they had us in the dorms at that point. Yeah.
Oh, so
Yeah. Tent City was
you didn't actually go to
yeah.
selection then.
Yeah, no, no, it was I think yours was the last hard class, if I remember correctly.
I
So,
wasn't the last hard class. There were a few after me, but
yeah,
if you
yeah, I
didn't
got
go to the
it.
tents, and then before us,
Yeah,
it was some other buildings that were similar bad conditions.
yeah.
When I got out to McCall that one time, and they said, "Oh, that's selection over there," I went, "That's what do you mean? Like where's the where's the tents? Where's the porta
Yeah,
shitters? Like
yeah.
that's not that's the Ritz Carlton."
Yeah, so they still had Tent City, I think that's what they call it. But that was like for like the guys that either voluntarily withdrew or were injured, whatever. Then they would send them to the tents there,
That's
which
too
that always
bad.
sucked. But yeah, no, yeah, we yeah, it was nice living conditions, but I mean that's above my pay grade, bro.
No, I'm sure it was a terrible, cost for them to get rid of those or whatever. They were, to heat and cool those things in the summer and the winter was probably not very efficient. But
That could not have been. Oh my gosh, yeah.
so what was the why, right? Because so you're in the
Mhm.
guard and you're like, I want to fucking do this. Kind of like
Yeah,
I was at my unit. So
yeah.
why say let's go to selection? Was it just the
Mhm.
one that popped up, or was it just some
No,
unachievable goal that you're like, I want to see if I can do that?
it was two things. I think for one, it's every guy has their what I call I think what's kind of more colloquially known as like their hero's journey. Like the one thing that you want to accomplish. For the most part, most guys have this thing that they're like, I need to do something that's seemingly undoable, conquer the seemingly unconquerable. And I think that's what the Green Beret was for me. No, like I mentioned earlier, no one in my family had ever been in the military. No one in my family had ever gone to college. So I kind of wanted to set the bar higher, set a higher standard just for my family and for my lineage as a whole. So there's that aspect of it all, right? My hero's journey, the striving to do something that I think that statistically is undoable. Where if you tell somebody I want to do this, you're gonna be like, okay, guy, good luck. So there's that. And then there's the other aspect of it all where like I really enjoy medicine, man. And like I knew going into it that it was 18 Delta or nothing. Now, granted, I know that that's not really up to me, like it really
Oh,
isn't, but it was just my mind was set, man. It was set. And so when I got out of selection and they were like, hey, tell us about some of the experiences that you've had and like beforehand and why we should pick you for Delta. And I was able to kind of tell them like some of the internships that I've done, some of the places that I've shadowed, individuals that I've worked with. They're like, 18 Delta for sure. Which at the time, thank God that that was a thing. But the reality is, I didn't know that that was, that's not necessarily always the case. But I mean, one of the chapters in my book actually is control the controllables, influence the variables, right? So
right.
that's sort of like how I live my life, right? Control what I can control, influence what I can't. I didn't know whether or not I'd be able to control what MOS I got, but I knew that at the very least, if I could influence it in any way, shape, or form, that's precisely what I would do. And so, I was blessed sufficiently to be able to do so. And, I found myself going to the 18 Delta pipeline. But I mean, it was really those two things, man. It was wanting to do something that is statistically impossible. I wanted to test myself, push myself beyond my limits. And then the next thing was really honing in and practicing medicine to a degree that I thought was like, yes, this is actually doing the medicine, you know. And it was great, man. I really enjoyed it, and that was really my why.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, it's good to have a purpose.
for
Some
sure.
people just like, yeah, I just want to see if I can do it. They tend to fall by the wayside or they really get into it.
Yeah, man. I mean, to this day, man, like if there's I would say if there's one aspect, one singular, if I had to pick one singular aspect of like of the Q course that I missed, dude. I mean, you never really get that deep dive into medicine once you leave the Q. Like you don't get it in group, because you're doing so many different things.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many, and that's again, that's the kind of thing that like far more senior guys than me really understand it, I'm sure, and they can certainly speak more on it than I can. But it becomes almost immediately apparent that while yes, you are the Delta on the team, you are not the team doctor either. You're not there to doctor
No.
solely to doctor. Like you're there to do everything else the team is doing, and if and when necessary, be the medic. Um, but but yeah, that's one thing that I could definitely tell you. Like I thoroughly enjoyed about specifically the 18 Delta pipeline was how in depth they get into the medicine and how they're able to teach guys. I mean, some of the guys there had never been to college, high school grads. Like, dude, that's unheard of in the civilian world. That is unheard of. Like when we would rotate in different hospitals, man. I mean, you had to have even like guys that were in medical school are like barely allowed to touch patients,
Yeah.
barely, and they're in med school. You got Sockums that are straight out of high school. They went through the pipeline for a year, let's just say, and then dude, they're out there getting after it. They're out there getting after it, like really, really getting their hands into it all. And that's
Yeah, you're
phenomenal, man.
doing your trauma rotation pretty quick, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And you're in a shitty part of town.
yeah,
Bullets are flying, stab wounds,
a hundred
people are
percent.
people are dying, there's blood everywhere, and they're like, okay, well, you put your hand there.
Yep,
Yep, take care of
yep,
that, put some pressure on that.
yep.
But yeah, I looking back, I think I took a little bit of an easy route when they said, what MOS do you want to be? I kind of just took the cop out because I'd been in construction my whole life.
Hmm.
And I went, yeah, I'll just be 18 Charlie.
Yep.
And I didn't learn a fucking thing that's useful in the real world. I just everything they didn't teach me anything I knew in the
Huh.
construction but the explosives part, yeah, that's
Mhm.
useful if you get into a job that you blow shit up.
For sure.
And the way I got medically retired, concussions, I don't know if explosives were really supposed to be my thing anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah, just and then my language, Thai. When I get to
Oh,
Thailand,
dude, yeah.
everybody speaks English. I'm like, what the
Yep.
fuck is this?
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe I just didn't pick the best out. I got a lot of useful life skills out of it, but
Hmm.
maybe I should have picked a different MOS and language. But then
For sure.
everything
It's
would have
always
turned out different, though, right? Everything
for
would be
sure.
different. I don't know where I'd
Yeah.
be. So, wouldn't
Yeah,
be
man.
talking to you. I'd probably be over
Yeah.
there, and you'd be over here. It'd
Yeah. Who knows, bro?
be an
Yeah,
alternate
man.
timeline. So, I guess I shouldn't complain too much, and something will change. I don't know. Fuck.
I know.
So,
Hey, you got a pretty sweet setup, man. So it's always good.
man, well, the behind the scene, I'm going to post
Yeah.
a picture probably this weekend. I'm finding shit around the house to absorb sound and get my
Oh,
setup
dude.
here. I
Yeah.
got these
Yep.
cheap lights. It's pretty funny looking down here. So, how was selection for you? Was there any point that you're like, I don't think I'm going to make it, or were you pretty ready to be done with it?
Dude. So it was never a mental like how can I put it? I'll tell you about my experience that I talk about in my book actually. I distinctly remember it was actually the first week. I mean, I'm sure your audience is pretty well aware at this point. Week one, gate week. Week two, land nav week. Week three, team week. Week one, we're doing one of the rucks. I rolled my ankle so bad, like terribly. It was just immediate, just eat the dirt, just not getting up, dude. And every attempt that I had at getting up was just like, just the worst imaginable pain, just shooting up my leg, dude. And it was one of those moments where I was like, okay, like this might be it. Like this is probably it. Like, despite the fact that like this is out of my control, like I had no idea, like this, like how like what else do I do? And it's one of those moments actually that to this day, I mean, it was impactful enough that I write about it, and it's one of like the hallmark moments of my personal life. I distinctly recall. I remember they walked us through the procedure of like what to do if you get injured, get off the side of the road, take off your rug, put your freaking vest in front of it, put on your red headlamp, and we'll pick you up. I did all. I did it all, man. Like I was like, I don't know how I can physically continue here. I did it all. Set off to the side. I don't know how long I waited. And then something, I don't know what it was, but I just remember distinctly just hearing this voice that it brought me back to like one of the things that I heard, like a constant mantra that I heard growing up. And it was from a Marine Corps drill instructor. I remember this. He said, if you quit now, you'll always quit in life. Which, dude, I don't know, for whatever reason, man, it just kind of goes to show how impactful the words that you listen to and the things that you absorb, how much of an impact those things can have. Because I just recall hearing that on repeat in my head, and whatever it was drove me to go from sitting off on the side of the road with everything ready to go and just waiting for a truck to come pick me up to putting everything right back on and just limping my way to the end. And I was like, and dude, sheer pain regardless. But it was like, okay, at the very least, I know that I did not quit. If they're
Mhm.
gonna drop me, they're gonna drop me. But I know that I did not quit.
Yeah.
And I would not be here today. I would not have met my wife. I would not have had my son. I would like my career would not have looked the way that it looked. Nothing had I stayed sitting off on the side of the road with my ruck off. I was like, and it was one of those moments in my life where I was like, this is what they mean by like at all costs. Like if you die, you die. Like that. Like you just it doesn't matter your pain, your like your how hurt you are. None of it, dude. You just have to keep going. Like you just have to keep going. Doesn't matter how motivated you are. Doesn't matter how tired you are. Doesn't matter how hurt you are. None of it matters. Man, you just have to get up and take it one step at a time, man. And that was probably the one moment in selection that I was like, oh, dude. Like, but after that, after at the very end of every event, they usually had like, hey, if I call your roster number, go ahead and make a separate formation to my right, your left. After I was in the group of like, you're gonna continue, I was like, oh boy, okay,
Well, we can't waste this opportunity now. Uh, yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
and you never know. You never know when you're going to get
No, you
dropped.
don't.
You know,
No, you don't.
the guy I was talking to earlier today. He's like, "Yeah, man, I quit at one point. Walked down the middle of the road for like 500 meters. Nobody picked me up. Nobody picked me up. So I went, well, I guess I'm not quitting." And then he found out where he
Yep,
was and continued on. You know, everything could have changed if they would have just rode down the road on a truck. But
one
you know,
hundred
you
percent.
have a. That's the thing, right? You know, something bad happens to you. Take a pause, think about it,
Yes,
and don't make a
yes,
decision hastily. And that works with
yes.
everything in your life. Like
Everything.
if you make a decision when you're in
Yeah.
pain or something bad has just happened to you, that could affect you for the rest of your life.
It
You can
absolutely will.
you
Yeah.
look back on anything in a lot of times in your life, you know, and decisions made in haste. What does my dad always say? What did he say? Haste makes waste, right?
Yeah.
There's no,
Yep.
and then I'll fly down the road at 105 miles an hour and go, yeah, well, nobody's pulling me over, so yeah, but whatever.
Dude,
So,
you're absolutely right, man. And that's kind of one of the things that like that constantly bringing it back to like lessons learned. It's just like how important your daily regular decisions are, man. Like your decisions impact so much of what you do. And that's not to say, because I absolutely agree with you, man. Like especially like you know during less than ideal circumstances, the right move is to take a pause, figure out what you want to do, and then act accordingly. With that being said, sometimes people also rush to failure, or they take way too long to make a decision. There, there are no, you don't know what's going to happen, but I feel like like more often than not, it's a decision that you can live with, that you'll look back and not regret having done that. You know, I know for a fact that if I would have quit when I thought about what the hell is that, dude? If I would have quit when I thought about it, um, that would have been it, man.
what the
Did
fuck
you see
was
that?
that?
Did you see
Yeah,
that?
that was
I don't know
fireworks
what that was,
background.
dude. Yeah. What is that?
Are you on an iPad or
No, no, no. It's my iPhone, but yeah, that was wild. Did you? I was like, I don't know what that was.
we'll see if that cuts into the final draft of this show.
All right. Yeah.
One thing with all those things and decisions, though, right?
Yeah.
You can train yourself to be
Uh-huh.
able to make a quick decision or take a pause. And that just comes from
100%.
repetitions, right? I want to be really good at
100%.
interviewing people. When I started 6 weeks ago, I had
Yeah.
interviewed zero people ever. And now,
Yeah.
you know, I'm up to 20 and 20 people with a similar background as me and things like that. But the only way I'm going to get better is to just do it. And
100%.
the only way to be able to deal with stressful situations is to put yourself in situations that you're not comfortable with. Like you want to be
Yeah.
more fit in the gym, guess what? You're going to have to go to the gym. Don't overdo it. That's where people fuck up the most. You can't overdo
Hmm.
it because then you quit, right? If you take on more
Yep.
than you can chew, then you're going to quit. That's where everybody says, oh, I need to go to the gym 7 days a week so I can get back in shape and I need to push it. Nope, no, you
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
Nope, that is not true. That is the wrong approach. That's with
100%,
everything.
man.
And people, you got to apply that to your whole scope of life and say, okay, I need to
Yes.
do this in small, manageable pieces so I don't
Yes.
quit. Because you know yourself, right? I am my own boss and I know I suck. I don't want to listen to me. I don't want to
Hmm.
do that shit. So what am I going to do? I'm going to make a small, manageable goal that I can
Yeah.
accomplish easily. And then when I get done, I'm going to give myself a treat. Not too big of a treat, but a
Yes.
little treat at the end. And you just got to treat
Yeah.
yourself like a
Yeah.
fucking
Dude, and
child.
yeah. No, absolutely, man. No, I think you make a great point, man. And the fact of the matter is, like, resiliency is developed. It really is. You develop resiliency over time, and not just over time, but over, you know, what anybody who lives understands is that progressive overload, right? You push yourself more and
Yeah.
more and more, a little bit at a time, and then before you know it, man, you find yourself in a position where you're like, okay, I can do this. I'm more than capable. What you have to, you have to get past that perceived threshold. If you can get past that level, if you can get past that in your mind, at that point, that perceived point of failure, rarely, if ever, aligns with your physical point of failure. Rarely, if ever.
Well, that was selection. So, Major Decker stood out there and he said, your body or your mind will give up long before your body will give up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. We only quit because it hurts in our head.
Yeah.
There's a big difference
Oh,
between hurt and injured. And
yeah.
everybody mistakes hurt for actual injury when you're just going to be in some pain. I can be in some pain.
Yeah.
Is
But
this going to affect me
tying
for
it
my
back
whole
to
life? Quitting is going to affect you for your whole life, like you said, right?
100%, man. Absolutely. Dude. And I think back to kind of what we originally started talking about is like how, the things that guys want to or don't want to or are more, inclined to or less inclined to talk about. The reality is, I mean, we live in a society where those types of hardships, while I'm not saying that this is the case for everybody, but those types of challenges and physical hardships like that are not common. You know, finding yourself in those types of scenario, severe environments, things like that. People don't people don't come across those situations on a regular basis.
But it gets marginalized when you get to group, though, because you get to group and there's 2,000 other dudes that have the same background.
Yeah,
And they go, I don't care. Everybody here's
right.
just as badass as you are. So shut the
Yep.
fuck up. And
Yep.
then you kind of go, this is just normal here. So
Yep.
you kind of just get put back in your place. And then when you get out,
100%. Yeah.
you kind of marginalize yourself, or you have this like imposter syndrome of, maybe I'm
For
not
sure.
worthy of my accomplishments.
And I think it helps to, to again stay tethered to reality and understand sort of your limitations and whatnot. But simultaneously, it goes kind of back to like what we're always taught is like to understand your operational environment, right? So yes, while in group, everybody falls well within that bell curve, like smack in the middle. Once you leave that operational environment and you find yourself in the civilian world, I mean, you are far right of center. In certain aspects, you really are. When it comes to your leadership ability, when it comes to tenacity, resiliency, discipline, all those things, striving through and getting through difficult experiences. You're well within 80th, 90th, 95th, 99th percentile,
Yeah.
you know? And so when guys kind of come to terms with that and take that into consideration, it reemphasizes the point wherein it's almost a responsibility to talk about the things that you've gone through. Because what it does is it also helps the rest of that tail end of the bell curve to realize, okay, it is in fact doable. It's doable. I'm not limited by my hardships. I'm not limited by my trials, my tribulations, because this guy can do it, then so can I. You know, like at the end of the day, sure, we've made it through selection, the Q course, which is, these are all phenomenal things. But going back to what we said, and a common sort of like, you know, a common idiom is, if a tree falls and no one hears it, did it actually fall? I mean, yeah, it did, but nobody's learning from it. Nobody's hearing from it. Nobody's getting anything out of it. And I think that there is a level of importance and there's a true benefit, and I would be inclined to say a responsibility to talk
Yeah,
about some of these things.
there it is. That's a responsibility, right? Because if we're the best, then we should uphold the standard even after we're out, right?
100%.
But I think a lot of guys are held back by they have all these amazing skills that translate to the private sector, the civilian world, but they're held back by their interpersonal skills and their people skills.
Mhm.
They don't know how to translate all of that into civilian language, or they just don't want to even deal with civilians
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
and they'll just go, oh, I don't want to fucking deal with it, and they won't, or they'll
Yep.
have mental issues that they haven't dealt with, and they'll crawl inside of a bottle and never leave.
Yeah.
That's
See,
a
but then
problem.
you 100% it's me, but you take that, right? And while I know that this may not resonate with everybody who's maybe listening to your show or anything, but it will, I think, for the most part, with a lot of the guys, especially like the GBs that listen. If you imagine taking that mentality and that approach to Robin Sage, dude, you would immediately get dropped. Like imagine being the
Oh,
guy who's like, I don't really want to deal with these I don't want to deal with the locals. I don't want to deal with, with the G Chief, I'm good. Like I don't even want like you would make it. The reality is that that's kind of where you fall into when you leave the military and move into the civilian sector. It is a
But
completely new world.
I have a theory about that, right?
What's that?
Is I don't know if it's a theory, right? Most people join the army. I know I did to
Mhm.
get away from a shitty situation in the civilian world that they wanted to get
Okay.
away from. Like they didn't want that life. So they
Yeah.
started a completely new fairy tale life on base in the army, right? And then that
Mhm.
world's gone. And then after a certain amount of time, they have to go back to that world they left behind. And now they have no skills to deal with it because before, at least, they
Mhm.
were acclimated to it. So now they have to leave the army, which isn't a real
Yeah.
place. It's a fantasy world,
Yeah.
right? Different rules,
Yeah.
different laws. I mean, you can go to jail for not jumping out of an airplane. I know that's fucking weird.
Mhm.
So now you get out and you're forced back in society and you got to deal with all those
Mhm.
problems that you ran away from 20 years
Mhm.
ago or however long ago. So I think that's something that most people don't think about. Like there's some unresolved issues that a lot of people that join the military are trying to get away from that they're
Yeah.
forced back into when they get out. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
man, and I
That's
think
one.
I absolutely agree in that everybody sort of you're right. I think everybody has their sort of trajectory that that they've gone through in life. Whatever gets you there, at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. The military is its own ecosystem, its own culture, its own fake world, and it really is, man. It really is. And that even applies to a number of times that I've had conversations with like civilian friends after the fact that I'm like using military idioms without even knowing it.
Yeah.
Like it's just say it, and they're like, "What the hell? What did you what? What is that?" Like even something as simple as like, "Hey, I'm gonna go ahead and push this timeline to the right." They like that's not a common saying. Where I've been stopped a couple times. Like, what does that even mean? Suffice to say, like it is just such a different culture, man. It really is a different culture, and especially guys who stay there for 20 years, man. That is a long time. That is a
Yeah.
long time. That is a lifetime, man. That is a whole dude.
It's
The
a
amount of
murder
things.
sentence. I mean, that's if you kill somebody 20 years, yeah, you're going away for
Yeah.
life. Yeah, so it's just one murder basically, unless depending on what state you're in, but
Yeah.
it's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
So no, I guess yeah, we everybody there's a lot to unpack there, right?
No,
But
there really is.
no, man. So we get through selection, and you had the little
Mhm.
thing in your book there. You got that little piece of paper. How much? Because
Mhm.
I know when I passed selection, I went and found that Rocky clip from Rocky when he's at Rocky 2, right? When he wins the
Yeah.
championship. He's like, except for my kid being born, this is the greatest moment of my life. Yo,
Yep.
Adrian, I did it. And
Yep.
that's what graduate selection was for me. I was like, God, cause I had coming from my unit, I had poured everything into that and emptied
100%.
the tank at selection the second time, right? I
Yep.
was completely exhausted and I walked in there when they were going to hand me the sheet. I knew what it said on it. Like I knew
Mhm.
what I was going to pass. But
Yep.
yeah, that was everything for me. And then, because that was the high point for me of the whole thing. How was it
Mhm.
getting that sheet and knowing, yeah, fucking accomplish that goal, on to the
Well, man,
next.
it's sort of like tangible proof of this might sound cheesy, but it is tangible proof of like the degree of possibility that is now in your hands. Like it is such a exhilarating moment of just like, okay, there's a real possibility of success here. Like it's surreal, man. It is surreal, and it's somewhat indescribable in that regard because you've gone through something and you've pushed yourself to such a degree, both mentally, physically, emotionally. Like it truly just blood, sweat, and tears from the moment you start, from the moment you walk into the recruiting office to the moment that you get that piece of paper that's just selected on it. I mean, it's just relentlessly pushing yourself past your limits to get that piece of paper, Like so much wrapped around one sheet of paper, man. And that's what I found, especially like in the military, which is wonderful about that culture in particular, is that there is so much value to some of these like seemingly simplistic things, you know? I talk about it in my book how like your Green Beret costs like $20 to get, but there's so much value in it.
Yeah.
So much value. And it's similar to getting that piece of paper that's just selected.
Yeah. It's just a 8.5 by 11 A size sheet of paper, just a couple words on it. But
That's it.
it's tough to convey too, right? Because what's there like that in the civilian world? You know, you do you graduate college, but nobody's it's not like life or death or anything. You know, you're going to classes and things like that. You get your degree, go to a job, and then you start working a 9 to 5. There's no feeling like that that's transferable. Of like I am emptying the tank. I'm putting all of my effort into this to
Yeah.
change my life. And do you see any parallel in civilian life? There's got to be something.
So the only way that there's two ways that I would perhaps draw a parallel. Number one is perception, right? So perceived exertion versus actual exertion. So for all those guys who like all they, I say all they've done, but there is a actual level of like difficulty and challenge that goes, that goes into it. Going from high school to college, from college to master's, from master's to PhD, and then you finally get your career, whatever, however many years of schooling that is. I mean, that's could be anywhere from, Jesus Christ, 20 something, 20 years, potentially more. Ridiculous amounts of schooling. I can see how, like, for them, the perceived exertion is astronomical. And then there's also the fact that, again, going back to that bell curve, you like individuals with master's degrees and PhDs fall far to the right of that bell curve, in that they are the 80 something, 90th percentile of academics in the world. So in that regard, I can kind of wrap my head around it. But when it comes to physical grit, mental grit, there's something more primal, I think, about what you have to endure through selection in the queue. Really, selection is what we're talking about, but in order to get your Green Beret, but ultimately to get selected first, right? There's a more primal, real human level of grit that is required. It almost taps into this innate drive that you either have it or you don't. You either quit or you don't. You push or you don't. You know, and that I can't think of very many other instances that are, outside of maybe like SWAT, HRT teams, but even those guys are usually prior military. I can't think of any other parallels in the civilian sector where you have to tap into that, the most fundamental level of being a Homo sapien, a human, an actual human meat, wherein
Yeah.
you have to push yourself to that degree. I can't think of a parallel, not in today's society, not.
It would have to be in some sort of competition, right? Some sort of,
Yeah,
UFC,
athletics. Yeah, yeah.
like an
Oh,
athletic
yeah,
UFC,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, UFC, some
yeah.
sort of thing. Or if you want to give me some hate mail, still looking for my first hate email. If you want to comment in the comment
Yeah.
sections, let me know what you think there. But yeah, it's got to be something where that over the grind of day to day of just that constant training and for something that may never happen, right? Because that
Right,
happens a lot in
right.
athletics, and it does in the military too. You're preparing for something that may never happen, whether it's a
100%.
school or a deployment or a firefight.
Hmm.
That's really what the whole thing centers around, is training to go to war,
Yeah.
which is a wild thing to think about, right? Every time we went to the range or every time we trained for anything, the end result of that training was to be able
Yeah.
to do it when your life was in jeopardy.
Hmm. Right, and
Very
I think that's
interesting.
that's a very key point right there, and that's why I'm less inclined to even say just athletics in general, and more so inclined to say combatives, because
Yeah.
it really does come down to that. It's like you would have the closest parallel would have to be something wherein you are training on a regular basis for the possibility of having to defend your life,
Mm.
having to fight for your life. That's the closest parallel that I can draw. If there's a civilian equivalent to that, which the only one that I can really think of, like that you mentioned, is combatives UFC. Other than that, I mean, there are many where like what you're wagering is your life. There really are.
It's something. Yeah, it's something you got to experience, right? And
For
that's
sure.
why I spoke at my sister's company, and one of the questions was something that what should civilians know about veterans? And I was like, well, talk to them and ask them. No, I gave a real answer, but there's just so many things. It's just
Yeah.
so many things that you can't, and the kind of the ones that are hardest to convey, you can't explain. You kind of just have to be there
Yeah. Yeah.
and to experience some of the stupid shit that we go through or whatever. Not saying we're a
Yeah.
victim, victim mentality. It's just different life paths, right? The different experiences that people don't understand. And that's where I
Yeah,
think
man.
the interpersonal skills kind of let us down again, is because we can't convey these things correctly for people to consume what we're telling them.
And I think some of those things are just impossible too. like you were saying, some of those things are just impossible to really equate. Um, but at the end of the day, making the effort, making that genuine effort to try to connect, to try to convey, to try to illustrate, what it's like with the things that we went through. I mean, there's got to be there is, I think, true value in that, to a degree, similar to what a lot of civilians will do when we're transitioning into the civilian world. We're going into their world and coming out of our own, you know. But
Yeah.
it helps to have those guys be like, hey man, these are some of the things that I had to endure in order to get to where I'm at, you know. And
Yeah.
which is actually another thing that I was gonna kind of mention, and it kind of just popped into my head now again, is finding identity when you come out of the military is also very challenging. Where like the example that I normally talk to some of my friends about is, imagine being on an ODA and you get a guy that's brand new on the team, and he's like, hey dude, so, and you ask him like, hey, what experience do you bring? And his response is, dude, I worked for a Fortune 500 company, man. I made millions, like phenomenal at this job. Like I can literally take any stock and I can tell you exactly how to trade it, how to turn $1,000 into $1 million, so on and so forth. I mean, anybody on the team would be like, that's pretty freaking cool, dude, but can you shoot? What's your MOS? Can you do that? Like, yes or no? You know, that's really what's of value. Similarly to guys getting out of the military and going into the civilian sector, civilians would be like, hey dude, like what do you bring to the table? Oh dude, I used to do, freaking spies and fries, like all these different cool, sick dude. But how does that apply to what we're doing here? So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, all these like amazing experiences and skill sets don't seem to have an immediate parallel or translate or an ability to apply it into the civilian world. And that I think also tends to hold guys back in some way, shape, or form, wherein their perceived identity, how it was in the military, where it was skill badges, and where you have these tangible expressions of like the things that you've done, stripes on your ASUs, like you know what a guy's done just by looking at it. That's no longer the case in the civilian world. So what happens when you can no longer identify as such, or where that identity doesn't quite hold as much weight as it used to?
Oh, nobody
You know?
cares. Nobody cares when you get out.
No,
Civilians don't
no,
care. And even other veterans, they don't care either. They're just like, they'll kind of ask a few questions to see if you're
sure,
full of shit. But, nobody cares. It's like all that shit's gone. You gotta
that's
fit
it.
into society now, and you gotta not be a weirdo. I guess not
A
being a
hundred
weirdo,
percent,
that's
man.
a key.
There
Because
it
when
is.
you
You know
get
what?
out,
That's it. That's really it. Do not be a weirdo.
do not, if you feel, you start getting the tinglies like you're being a weirdo, try something else. Try a different
Yeah,
approach.
stop doing that. Yeah.
All right, let's
And
get,
dude, so go ahead, go ahead, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, so I was going to say, man, that's one of the reasons why I found writing this book so particularly therapeutic in that regard, because it really just kind of let me put some of the thoughts that I had, like of the military, and some of those like, the things that I was holding on to, some of those like that nostalgia and like, oh man, am I going to miss this? And I just made it permanent. It's there, like it's there. I could just pick it up, read it. Somebody else can pick it up and read it, find some sort of connection. They can experience it vicariously by reading the book. And of course, it'll never, ever, ever translate immediately. Like the feeling, the emotion, the feel, that true visceral experience never really gets conveyed. But at the very least, man, it's a modicum of the experience gets passed on through 80 pages if you include maybe like the last,
Yeah.
about the author.
No, at least you got a solid, frame where it's in print, right? It's
Yeah.
dead. It's dead. It's there. It's all,
Yeah.
printed up, except we found some corrections there. We're
We
gonna get
did.
those fixed. We're gonna get those fixed. But one crazy thing about this, right, is I've been having this thoughts lately. I'm like, sometimes my opinion or the way I'll word stuff will be different based on like what mood I'm in. And I'm
Mm.
recording just episode after episode after episode, right?
Right.
And I'm just a fear of mine is like, I really hope I don't like start sounding like I'm full of shit because,
Mm.
you'll talk to different people and you'll get into different conversations and you'll word things differently. And that's one of
Right.
my fears with this is like, I just don't, I always want to stay with how I feel on things and not commit one way or another in my
Gotcha. Gotcha.
experiences,
Gotcha.
and definitely not overextend what I did in the military. I'm very upfront about what
Yeah.
I did and there's things like that. But that's my big fear with this is like eventually I'll start to sound like I'm full of shit, and
I
that's
got
when
you.
it's time to be done.
Oh, for sure. Hey, dude, that was one of the things that like, especially like, cause I get it, man. And believe me, I'm totally cognizant of the fact that there's different schools of thought in regards to like whether or not SF guys should get out and write a book and this, that, the other. Like, I get it, man.
Those people.
There's different opinions on it. I totally understand. But here's my take on it, right? It goes back to what we've been talking about it this whole time, man. Like, if you don't, I genuinely believe it, and I'll reiterate, I cannot stress it enough. I think there's true value in the experiences that people have, and you should talk about them, right? On top of that, right? It's, like I said, fuck those people, but like, why? I mean, why not? It's like, as long as you're not, like you said, as long as you're not bullshitting your way through the entire thing, or you're not just, like talking about all these things you did not do.
Yeah, some
I mean,
people are
no,
getting
no,
in a lot of trouble for that right now.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, man, and you got to be careful with that, because that's really when you call into question, you know, everything, your reputation, so on and so forth. That's when it comes into question, and there's nothing worse than that,
Yeah.
is calling into question your integrity, you know. With that being the case, as long as that's not it, I mean, I don't think there's a single part of this book where I claim to have shot Bin Laden, anything like that. Like I didn't,
I thought
I
I
didn't.
saw that in there.
I think it might have been chapter 5. Yeah, the brief section there. Yeah, no, dude, but the fact of the matter is, like, I'm very straightforward with the fact that, like, I don't have decades and decades of experience in group, and I'm totally okay with that, because the things that I want the world to know and like people to read and learn and understand are the things that I'm, well within my purview to impart on the world. You know, as long as I'm not out there freaking blabbing about some stuff that, like you said, like I never did, or like trying to get my opinion on things that I have no idea. It's like I
Yeah,
think I
it's
think you're
so
you're
hard to
good.
get away from. It's so hard to get away with making any embellishments these days with
A
the way
hundred
that,
percent.
you got the TV, you got the phone, you got internet, everything. You're just one click away. And then even without all that technology in regiment, I mean, I've never met you before, but I
Right.
guarantee I can make one connection and know somebody that knows you.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I mean,
For sure.
so
For sure.
even you got to 1230 in what year? 18?
Yeah, it would have been 2018. Yeah, yeah. Because
Yeah,
then we went
so
to
I
advance in 2019, 2020. Yeah.
I was there in 17. So most of the people that were
A
still
hundred
there
percent,
know
man.
you.
Yeah,
So that's what's crazy about the regiment is
yeah.
there's very little in especially in the modern day. There's some, guys that made up some shit
Yeah.
back when,
Sure.
but you can't get away with
Yeah,
that
dude.
shit anymore at all.
Dude, yeah.
So,
And the other thing too is just the military as a whole is such a unique culture. It is so unique, man. Like these dudes that try to do the whole stolen valor thing, like you can't, like, there's no way you can get it all right, man.
yeah.
There's no way. There's so much minutia, so many little things here and there's so much detail to everything that you can only get it if you're just, it's drilled into your head from day one, and like if you've never experienced that, if you've never really been in that environment, in that culture, you will not get it right. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah, you talk to somebody for a couple seconds and you find out they're full
You
of
know,
shit.
100%, 100%. For
So,
sure, man.
we get to the course and everybody has
Yeah.
their high point and low point, but
Uh-huh.
you came in, you were focused on being a medic, right? So you
Yeah.
got SFMS, or you got SOCM and then
Uh-huh.
SFMS. Is that really where you poured all of your effort into and you kind of just made it happen there, or was there any other point in the course that stood out for you?
So when people ask me, not people, but like when I've had these conversations with folks, like
People,
yeah,
the
just
people, yeah, the
yeah,
people.
well, yeah, when all the people ask, but when I talk about it, man, like there's three phases in the course that really stand out to me. Number one, SEER, unique experience where can't really
You
dive too
know,
much into it, but that is a unique experience that is like you cannot replicate it.
And my
Go ahead, what's up?
viewers, they know this. It's, stands for survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. It's very
Yeah,
realistic, and that's really all kind of we
that's
can
it.
say about it. Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
Yep. So that unique experience, phenomenal. That one stands out. Sockham, NSMS for sure in just the medical side of things, and then the other one that I was like, okay, this is freaking legit. Robin Sage. Robin Sage is just like when you really put it all and you die, you just take all the MOSs, you make it into a real thing and how it actually applies. And the fact that you're just operating in the civilian world,
Yeah.
it's phenomenal, man. It's amazing. If you really take it serious and you take it to heart, the 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 second and third order effects of what you're doing, the sort of implied things that are going on around you. holy smokes, it really, you understand the level of operational and strategic impact that you're having, or that you can have as an ODA, you know?
Sage
Um,
is the real deal, and those people that work out
yeah,
there, they're bought in. They live in
dude,
Pineland. That's their whole
yeah,
existence. Like they take time off of their real jobs to go do this. They keep that contract. It is part of life out there in Western North
100%.
Carolina.
Yeah, and there is no question about it. It feels as real, it feels that real, man. You're just like, where am I? Just
Yeah.
transported, man, immediately. Yeah, I would say those are like the three phases of the course that really stand out to me. Like, I learned about myself, I learned about my passions, and it really kind of like painted a more realistic picture of what the like why it answers the why. The Robin Sage answers the why of the Q course and selection. I was like, okay, got it, understand where my role falls in like the grand scheme of things. And now, granted, that picture is never fully illustrated until you get to group, and then you do other things in group where it really starts to fill in the details. But at
Mhm.
the very least, you start getting a pretty general outline at Robin stage. You're like, okay, I can kind of start connecting dots here and there. I can see where the pieces of the puzzle start falling in. It's almost like you have all your colors in a jigsaw puzzle, kind of like all grouped together, where you can kind of start seeing something, but they're not all put together yet.
Yeah. You know, uh, I spoke with Lieutenant Colonel Perry Blackburn. That episode will be
Okay.
out by the time this one comes out. It'll be actually coming out in a couple days, but back in the future, the order of things. But he's he was one of the first guys into Afghanistan. Uh,
Okay.
so he was the 550 commander, and with some of the original teams that went in,
Yeah.
and he said it was surreal when they started going in and just basically running a real life Robin Sage in the mountains of
That's gotta be
Afghanistan
wild, man.
with op fund. He's like the CIA came and landed, gave us a briefcase. We had to mark an X, and they gave him $1 million, and that's his op fund, and they're paying the G's and teaching them shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, was it really like that? And he says, man, it was surreal to just see they put this exercise on in the hopes that one day that we'll get to do that mission of UW. It's very interesting. It's crazy. I was enamored by that interview. You'll enjoy that one.
I'm
But
excited. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it, man. That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah,
That's
that's what's
awesome.
cool about this, man. To meet people that you
Dude,
never
yeah.
thought of. You just send them messages. Yeah, come on, we'll talk about bullshit, long
Hell
form,
yeah.
couple 2 3 hour interview, and just talk shit out. But
Let's do it. Yeah.
what was
It's a
um
great time.
what was the
Okay.
medic? Was the 18 Delta course everything you hoped it could be when you
Dude,
said I'll do that?
everything I hoped for and more, man. It really was. It was, I mean, so like I said, so when I was in college, I studied at Boston University. It was a health science and human physiology. Um, like I mentioned, in the civilian world, like they don't let you freaking, you don't touch patients in college. Like that's not even a question. Like you just don't. Maybe they'll let you take a stethoscope to somebody, and that's a maybe, Uh, and then getting to sock them and like after we're doing like EMT stuff, and they're like, hey, so you're gonna be EMTB certified in a month. Like, wait, what? Okay, month number one and you're EMTB. Immediately after that you're diving into pharmacology, human physiology. You're doing pin tests that I have to wait till my junior or senior year in college to do, where you actually get a cadaver and you have to like identify uh, nerves. You have to identify the what it is like on the anatomy, then nerve supply, blood supply, origin, insertion of muscles, like all these different functions. I mean, dude, like things that it's semester long courses in college and then again repeated in medical school. And the only reason I'll talk a little bit more about like medical school and all that stuff. So my wife, which actually I met her during soccer rotations. We talk about that too, but so I met her during soccer rotations, and so she's a doctor now.
Oh, she
But
didn't have a gun. She didn't have a gunshot wound.
no, 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 no.
Okay.
No, no, she's good. She's good in that regard. But but no, so I saw her go through the tail end of med school and her residency, and man, like I'll tell you, like the way that they set up the SOCM course and how they set up SOCM and SFMS guys for success, make it so that they can actually like practice their skill set alongside, med students, residents, and even brand new ND. It's brilliant, man. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Like Dude, I was doing so. I did my rotations in Tampa General Hospital down in Florida, and dude, I got to do a chest tube. I got to do all sorts of like scrub into different surgeries. I mean, things that like again, if you're not a resident in the civilian world, like that's years and years and years and years of schooling, man. Like
Yeah.
you're not doing that, you know. But as a soccer man, as a soccer man, you can have all those experiences. So yeah, man, it was everything that I hope for and more and more. I mean, you dive deep into trauma, you dive deep into pharmacology, everything from like ultrasounds, how to interpret different CT scans. It's wild. And then, and it's not just the didactic stuff. And this is where I always draw a point to, or I always try to emphasize the point. It's not just didactics. It's not just regurgitating a book. And one of the things that I like the most about the Stockholm course is that they hyper emphasize on that. It's not necessarily having to know every answer off the top of your head, right? Which now you know the basics obviously you want to know, but at the very least knowing where you can find the answers. Like no one expects you to get absolutely 100% on every single test question, but if you can go back and find the answer, fine. Where it really matters is can you do the thing? Because there are no like let me try again, you know, like let me kind of take a step back or hesitate or whatever. Can you do the thing? Anybody can regurgitate a book, especially in today's day and age, man. I can just look up any answer, done, you know? But can you actually put it into practice? That's a whole different ballgame, man. And that's where I think Sockham really prepares their guys. Is you get so much practice hands on, especially in trauma 2, trauma 3 rotations, that by the time you're in you know a real hospital setting, it's pretty chill to a certain degree.
Yeah.
You have
There's
so many
no
more people that are there.
there's no
That's it.
substitute for good real training, if you know what I mean, that you get
Yep.
in the Delta course. Because we got some cross training at group, and that's you can't. Once you do that, there's nothing going to phase you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for
You could
sure.
pretty much fucking handle anything once you do some of those exercises.
100%, man. 100%. No, no, you're absolutely right, man. And yeah, and so that's really why I thoroughly like looking back, man. I thoroughly enjoyed that so much. It was because, like you said, the level of realism is incomparable um, in the training side of things. But again, the applicability of it all, that's what changes the game for it, you know. And the fact that you're just within a year's time frame, you go from EMTP to practicing in a real hospital. That's unheard of, man. It
Mm-hmm.
also kind of, you know, it kind of brings into question a lot of the way that the educational system is structured outside in the real world to a certain degree.
Are you saying the educational system's a scam?
Oh, am I, dude? Am I, bro? Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, I mean, yeah, yeah, we could deep dive into that for sure, man. But like, there are definitely places where we can cut a lot of shenanigans out of the educational
Now,
system
come on,
without a doubt,
you can't
without a
compare
doubt, bro.
you can't compare future Green Berets to the general population.
Yeah.
So, but you can probably cut down, you know, the time from becoming a doctor from what, say, 7 years to maybe 5.
Yeah, yeah, dude, easily, easily, easily,
But
easily.
I never did that. I can't compare. If anybody wants to hate on me, check the comments.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Oh, I mean, I can tell you, dude, I mean, and I'm not speaking on behalf of my wife, but just from hearing her experiences, there are definitely places where a lot of the coursework can get cut down, and you still end up with, you know, with the ideal end state, you know, somebody who's capable of actually, you know, practicing medicine as it's intended to be practiced. Yeah. So
yeah.
there's definitely room for improvement for sure.
And at the end of the day, what is it? Is it D's or C's get degrees? One of the two. C's get degrees. So yeah, if you're still the lowest in your medical school class, you're still called
Yeah,
doctor.
you're still a doctor. That's it, dude. That's it.
Just might be in
It's
Florida or
true.
something like that.
It's
Did you, you know, day one of the Q course to to graduation day? What was that evolution like? Did you, you know, going from just walking in? Because when you start the
Mhm.
course, you don't have any idea about
No.
the stuff you're going to go through and how difficult it's going to be.
Yeah.
Well, how was that evolution of going, all right, this is going to be fun too. Oh, I'm fucking glad that's over.
Oh man. You know, I think it's like any sort of like long-term endeavor. There's always that like level of like that high degree of motivation as soon as you start. And all of a sudden you're just like, oh my God, this is just tedious and exhausting, you know what I'm saying? And that kind of starts to kind of dip down a little bit, but it's not so much that you're less motivated, but you're just exhausted from just constantly being stressed that, you know, because at the end of the day, I mean, and I see it all the time, like just because you got to the Q course doesn't mean you can't get dropped. Like, top plenty of dudes get dropped in the Q course. So that same stress that exists at selection is still there in the Q course. Like your career could disappear like that, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, so I remember getting to, I mean, the Q course is totally different now, but at least when I went in, like one of the first things you had to do was IUW, and it was like gate week all over again. You have to do it all over again, all the gates, which, you know, luckily, like you're pretty much good to go because you just did it all. But you still saw some guys because a lot of guys had to go back to their units and then come back. You know, like the guys that were active duty already, they were already in their, you know, prior MOSs, prior units, so on and so forth. Uh, so you had to kind of requal, if you will, in that regard. Still saw some guys get dropped there or recycled at least. So immediately you're kind of like brought back to reality. Like, hey, it's not over. You could still get dropped. Um, and then, so from IUW, if I remember correctly, it was IUW, then SUT. SUT, I mean, it's a grind in its own respect. And that's what you learn very quickly, that every phase has its own level of difficulty, its own challenge, its own sort of like, oh my God, this is going to suck. It's like you're excited to be there, but at the same time, you realize very quickly that every phase has its threshold of buckery and suck, that it's like, okay, got it. I got to make it through this part. But SUT was just physically just challenging, man. There was so much
SUT,
physicality to it.
FCT sucked. I hated it. I didn't want to be there. I just wanted it to be
Eh,
over. When I got my
ambush
go, I
recox,
was
man.
so happy. I was so happy. I just kind of droned out for the
Eh,
rest of the time. And I was like,
man.
fuck this. Let's get out of here. Especially when we it was our this one squadler. I think he'd failed 2 patrols,
Okay.
and now we're on last chance, and I'm in the back with my buddy. He's still in, so it'd be funny if someday he hears this because I went over to him. I was like, "What the fuck are we doing?" We're in the back of the patrol, and you're walking Camp McCall, right, out in the woods
Yeah.
there, and the moon's over there, and and we're walking, and then all of a sudden, the moon's in front of us, and then
Mm.
we're walking some more, and then the moon's behind us,
The moon is
over
moving.
it's over there, and motherfucker, we walked in a circle and I'll go over to my buddy. I was like, did we just walk in a circle? He goes, fuck this. I hope this guy gets fired. And yeah. So at that point, I was like, get me out of here. This is so dumb.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hated SUT, man. Fuck that shit.
Yeah, man. So I never went to Ranger School, but hearing from a lot of the guys that had gone to Ranger School, they definitely compared some aspects of it to it. I can't even imagine. I mean, I feel like in that regard, it's just, it sounds like, I mean, again, I can only speculate just from what guys have told me. I have never been to Ranger School, but it sounds like Ranger School, there's a lot more physicality to it, but it's still that same level. Like you can get drunk right now. Like, you like a couple, you know, two no-goes and that's it, dude. You're done, dude. Like you're out.
My buddy said about this about Ranger School. He's like, it's just stupid. He's like, I worked my ass off to get a go this one
Yeah,
phase,
yeah.
and I got recycled, and then so I just kind of went fuck it, and he went into his second go through that same phase,
Carry
and
on.
he's like, man, I didn't do shit, and I got to go.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how. He said it's just a suck fest. And
Yeah,
I went,
dude. Yeah.
especially in first group, right? Because very few guys, the farther you get away from Benning, very few guys have a Ranger tab. That was one thing at first group is it wasn't that prevalent. And
No, it wasn't.
I remember we sent a bunch of dudes once, and Sergeant Major was pissed because they all got dropped for like sit-ups or some
Oh,
shit. And he was pissed, and there was nothing he could do about it because they,
right.
booted all the Green Berets to get the Rangerback guys in.
Yep, I got
So,
you.
and when I heard that happen, I'm like, then it's not a real school. Then it's not a real thing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, you know,
And yeah, if you want to hate on me, you can hate on me in the comments. But when a bunch of dudes got dropped for sit-ups coming from Special Forces Regiment, just so the Ranger Battalion guys could get in, I was like, then that's not a real school. Then it's because these guys traveled halfway across country. I think some dudes came from Okinawa as well, just to get dropped. It's like this is not a real thing. That's
Jesus.
every other school
Yeah,
you get dropped for some sort of performance, not measuring up or things
metric.
like that.
Yeah.
But to just not get in because we had to let the back guys in, whether
Yeah,
that's
I got
true
you.
or not, I'd have to get a Ranger, training brigade guy on here to backs up some of those stories. But at that point, I lost all credence in that that was a real thing.
I think anyone who's gone through any army school is very well aware of the fact that cadre roulette is a thing.
Mhm.
Like that is an undeniable fact of life. Like there's easy cadre and then there's hard cadre. So
I never had
if
that. I
not
never had that at selection or
really,
in the course. No, everybody was fair. There was
uh,
if yeah.
no, I mean, so I don't. Okay, let me back up. I'm not saying that they're unfair necessarily, but there are strict. There was a couple of times where they were definitely like strict grader, a little bit less like inclined to pin you on like the small, tiny little. You didn't do this part. Like
No,
I don't
fuck
know,
that.
man.
When I got to selection, I bounced my chest off the ground, and
Yeah,
the second rep, I went slightly off the ground, and
yeah,
and I went up until I got to 90, and then I stayed there. I left no doubt. Like, he kept counting them. He kept
hell
counting
yeah,
them, and then I worked my way
yeah,
up. You got to know if you're going
no,
to some of those schools and everything, you leave no
yes,
doubt. You know,
100%,
I'm
one
not
hundred
gonna
percent
interpret 90 degrees. I'm gonna fucking make dirt fly
for
up
sure. You're
when
gonna
I
make
hit the
it.
ground.
Yeah, yeah.
But
No, absolutely, man, absolutely.
kind of went off on a tangent there.
No, 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 dude, but
So you obviously you graduated. Obviously a big moment in your life. What was that like walking across the stage getting the beret?
dude, that was so. I had my, my family came out, which was awesome, and it was the culmination of all those years of prep and training and going from being that like little kid that was watching 2 weeks in hell and like, oh, I want to do that one day to like all of a sudden like now, all right, there it is, man. Like now again, you're always being assessed now. It's just kind of you say grounded in reality. It's like, okay, you got your beret. Now you're going to a group. Now you're going to a real team. Now is when it really matters. So the day in and of itself, honestly, exciting, phenomenal, man. It's just like, okay, we freaking did it, man. Like this is it. Especially like for my class, we had I don't know if it was the same for when you went through the Q course, but we had a language phase last, and then graduation.
Yeah, yep.
Um,
But
but but at the same time, you got your beret before starting language. You see what I'm saying? So it's like so we
no.
would get our beret. Yeah. So this was a moment of controversy because this was pretty wild. So you would finish Robin Sage, you would get your beret, and then you would go to language. This is, I think our class was maybe the second class where they were doing that. So it was a bunch of guys walking around with their green berets,
But no
but going to
tab?
language school. Oh no, no, you had everything, but you still have to go through language.
Yeah, I
You see what
remember
I'm
them
saying?
talking
So
about this. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it was kind of a moment of like like any change in any pipeline, a moment of like what are we doing? Point being, it's like, yeah, you get your beret, at least for my class, it was like, we got a beret, that's awesome. We still have to get to the language, you know? So I didn't really feel like that real moment of like, okay, this is real until I got my orders to first group. That's when it really became like truly, okay, now you're going. Like now it's, now
Wait, you
it's,
had
now it's real.
this
Especially,
you had the ceremony and then when had to go back to
oh yeah,
language.
yeah, it was full ceremony, everything. You get your beret, and then you're going to language. Yep.
All right, we're gonna label that one fucking stupid right now. We're gonna say that's fucking stupid.
Man, so it was literally immediately after getting your beret. It was like I think what's the language 4 or 6 months apart,
It
if I
was
remember
just
correctly.
shy of 6 months.
Yeah, just shy of 6 months, and I got Korean, which was a good time, man. Now I can talk about why I got Korean, and that's primarily
Because you look
because
Korean,
yeah, oh
obviously.
yeah, 100%, dude.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm 3-3 in Spanish. Got Korean. This was self-imposed though, self-imposed, and I'll tell you why. Um, like I said earlier, I met my wife in Stockholm, right? So
Is
she
she
was a
Dutch?
medical student. No, she's not. she's Dominican and Puerto Rican, bro.
Okay.
Yeah. So met her in Stockholm. She was a medical student at the time, and she was going in. She was also going into the army, but she was going in upon graduation from medical school. She would go in as a doctor. So we got married when she was still in med school, and then she got commissioned and she became a doctor. She got stationed in JBLM. The only way that we can stay together is through the Married Army Couples Program. So there it is. See, there it is. That shit. There it is, man. And that's the only way we can do it. So I still bring this up. It's my trump card with her, man. I'm like, I learned Korean for you. I'm like, learned Korean.
There was a guy, and I forget his name, and he was in the hallway, and
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Mexican,
Yeah.
and even spoke Korean with a Mexican accent. Just but he had a great reason. He goes, I didn't want to take the easy route out and go to seventh.
Okay.
He's like, I wanted to challenge myself. And I was like, that's
Yeah.
commendable,
Okay.
to
Sure.
take on another language to actually learn something. I was like, that's a pretty good reason. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, how's your Korean? He goes, oh, terrible.
Yeah. Dude,
Like,
I'm
oh,
glad. I'm actually so I'm pretty happy that I was able to hold on to a little bit of my Korean, man. And I will say I never used it once and never used it once. No.
have you been
But
to Korea?
no, no. Because I'm
Oh,
saying like, yeah, never went to Korea, like, never used it, nothing, dude. But oh man, like did I mean, was it an experience? Yeah. Am I glad that I actually got to learn another language yeah, absolutely, man. Like any opportunity to like, especially like new languages that, I was 24, 25-ish at the time, government funded language class. Like, I mean, it sucked while you're there, but at the end of it, you're like, all right, I actually like learned a thing or two, man. Now, I
we
will
just,
say this, especially with the mission set in seventh group now,
yeah.
there's a part of me that still wishes I would have gone seventh, man, because seventh group now is really like, that's good
Hey,
times, man.
hey, man, you said you just ETS'd, right?
No, dude, at this point, like 2 years,
Yeah, but
2 or 3 years ago.
you ETS though, didn't you?
Yes, yes, yes.
I mean, you can go back tomorrow. I mean, every day I think I'm like, oh man, could I go back? And then I go, no, you can't go back. Stop thinking that way. But
Yeah. I got you. I got you. I got you. Yeah. Yeah.
you could, if you're like you want to go back, they'll take you back.
I'm sure they would, man. I'm sure they would.
I was talking to the
Man.
guard guys down here, and they're like, "Yeah, man, if you can figure out how to get your shit waived, we'll take you." It's like that's as easy as that, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's different in the guard, man. We'll figure it out." It's like, "Oh, okay, that
Dude,
sounds a
that's
little
awesome,
shady."
man. Yeah, well, I had a couple of my buddies that ended up going into the guard route after the fact. I mean, like anything, it's kind of mixed reviews. But dude, like, it kind of seems like not the worst gig after active duty. You know what I'm saying? It's like, dude, you're still an SF guy. You still get to do a lot of the SF stuff. You still get to kind of exercise your civilians.
It depends. It depends. Like my, I got one buddy. He's a company team or a B team sergeant, and he likes it. But
Yeah.
they go weird ways about getting people recruited. They got to send people to selection, so they got to find people. It's not like active
Mm,
duty. Some their mission sets are different,
right.
and training and getting guys to come to training and who's going to be there and what are they doing and shit and all that other stuff. So
Yeah,
it's just a different way of being an SF guy. But if you get
for
used
sure.
to it, I have one friend that was active and then he went to guard and he's now like, I'm done. I'm going back. So it's like, fuck, good
Oh
for you,
yeah.
man. So,
Nice.
but all my guys now are from my year group are pretty
Mhm.
much starting to look at eight, I think. Yeah, they're all
Okay.
right
Okay.
in zone for eight. So
Gotcha.
good on them. Fuck, I
Yeah,
hope.
man. Yeah.
Yeah, there were some studs in my class, so I'm sure they'll make it, or they won't. Fuck them. I don't know. So it's a weird thing, right? You accomplish this monumentous task, and then
Hmm.
you get to group, and you're just the fucking new guy. And in your case,
Hmm.
an X-ray. What was that like?
Hmm.
Walking into battalion and saying, "I'm here to in process."
So here's the good thing about my experience, and it's why I'm forever blessed and glad that this is kind of how it played out. When I got to to my team, 1236, they were already slotted for a deployment to Afghanistan. Like, so I was one of those, like, cadre tell you this in the Q course all the time. They're like, hey, some of you guys, all you're gonna have is the Q course, so you better focus, get what you can now, because you're not gonna get anything once you get to group. Some of you, and I was kind of like, I was generally like, we'll see, we'll see. Dude, that was me, man. Like me and my a couple other buddies that I had process with. Um, we got there, and it was second battalion, and I think one company in third that was deploying.
What year? What year
And
is this?
2018, and then so we deployed 2019 to 2020.
Is that when Jeremy was killed?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm very
Yes.
good. I was very good friends with Jeremy.
Oh man, yeah, yeah, man. That was that deployment. But yeah, dude, it was luckily getting there and that being the what's immediately next. There was no time to sort of like do the typical like FNG hazing.
Yeah.
Your crucible was, dude, this is real now. We're deploying. Like, you better have your shit straight. And that was one thing that was like awesome. And I will say, like, the guys who were on my team, I'm not just saying this because I was on the team with them. These guys were the type of dudes that like literally just brought me in immediately. And I think a lot of it had to do because we were deploying. There was, like I mentioned, there was no time for just like shenanigans and playing fuck games and whatnot. But also at the same time, I made it a point to go in there and just keep my mouth shut. Like I knew nothing. I had nothing to say. And I remember even on deployment, like when when Team Tower was doing his briefings, so on and so forth, like, he would ask questions, he would ask for input, opinions. I would just, dude, what do I have to say?
Nothing.
Uh,
Unless there's
exactly.
a safety violation, nothing.
100%,
Yeah.
100%, dude, 100%. And the only times that I ever spoke up was when I was either asked to or tasked to. That was it. That was it. Because at the same time, there was also that level of professional development that did exist. So where my senior, he would often brief sort of the medical portion. The first several missions, I was there to help him build the medical section, the medevacs, plot all the points, do all the stuff, all the legwork that went into the behind the scenes, if you will. But well into maybe second into the third month, like they were like, all right, you're briefing it. Like, it's your turn, man. Get into it. And got it. I would follow suit. I would practice, rehearse with my senior, make sure that I was covering all the points that were necessary. Uh, and then after that, it was say, hey, like a little bit more leeway, a little bit more rope, a little bit more rope, and then anytime that again, I made it a point to kind of like what we talked about earlier, just not give any reason to have to yank that rope back. And a lot of that just comes down to acting in the most humble manner that you possibly can. But that was really the approach that I took, man. It's like I have absolutely nothing to contribute right now because I'm in full 100% absorb mode. I've never been deployed. I have no idea. I've never been in a group. I've never been on a team. Like, all I can do right now is absorb and try to perform at the best that I possibly can. And if there's one thing that I wanted to make sure that everybody there was aware of, is that at the very least, when it came to doing my job, when it came to doing medic stuff, that I could do that. You know, Especially in a deployed setting, if I can show that I can do that, then it just builds that much more trust in that. Okay, he can do what he's tasked. What his MOS is. After that, we can build on that. And again, it goes back to that's far less about words and more about action you know like that was so for me, like, getting to group was a phenomenal experience because of the fact that it forced me to immediately apply everything that I learned to the real thing. Like, there was no joking around, there was no like, this is a simulated environment, act as if, dot dot dot. No, this is, we're in it, man. Like, there is nothing else. This is it. uh so it was definitely a relatively unique experience for transitioning from the Q course into group, but one that I'm undoubtedly glad that it was the case.
Yeah, experiences may vary. I did not have anything similar to that experience. And and then it was over and then I'm like, support role. But yeah, I get that, that's how it is, right? There's different, and the only way it evens out is if you have a long career, right? Then you get to do everything. But
Yes.
if you stay in for a little short amount of time, just one reenlistment or 5 years in SF or whatever, you're only going to get to do this little piece
Yeah.
of this enormous amount of shit you can do, right?
Right.
And the only
Right.
way to see it all, or even understand that it's all there, is to stay in a long time.
Yes.
And I think a lot of guys, uh, younger guys, make the mistake when they get to group. They go, "Oh, it's not for me," and they do their one enlistment and they get out. When maybe you should have stayed a little bit longer, but family
Yeah.
comes into play and decisions and things
Yeah.
like that.
And that
Then
that was sort of my. Go ahead. Go ahead.
they can see all that other shit that's out
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
because it's a fantastic place to have a career. I would have loved to have stayed.
Mhm.
And I think some guys that, it's not for me, that kind of take it for granted. Like I would switch places with you.
Yeah.
I would love to be in your shoes and you're just going to go off. But everybody has to make their own decision and go the way that their heart is telling them to go.
100%, man. And you know, the reality, at least for me, was I always wanted. How can I put it to you? everybody wants to have that, that sort of like Afghanistan deployment or combat deployment. At the time it was primarily Afghanistan. Um, and I was definitely excited to go, and I was like, oh, dude, this is legit. But after having been there and done the deployment, I will say it made a lot, like, it made you really, like, I remember one time, and this was my senior Bravo. He was like, hey, dude, like, take advantage of this deployment, man. Like, any and all opportunities that we get to freaking go to the range and go shoot, just, let me know, grab whatever weapon system you want, grab some ammo, let's go do it. Same with my senior Charlie. He's like, hey, dude, like, what charges you want to try? You want, whatever, you know? Uh, I was like, okay, yeah, cool. I thought that was what group life was going to be like too.
No, no.
So that was so in that regard, it's like getting to group and deploying immediately was awesome. But then I got to group and I realized all of the paperwork that goes into one range, all of the logistics and all of the planning. I was like, whoa, okay, got it.
You,
Now I understand.
yeah, if you want, and other guys have, expressed to me, or kind of we've talked it out, is what they thought group was going to be is the next level above group. That's a whole nother
Yeah,
selection and a whole nother training course. That's what they thought it was going to be like. And then
yeah,
you realize, no, that's not it. You gotta go somewhere else to get that, what you
for
think it was
sure.
supposed to be.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I tell some of my buddies this because I had the privilege of working with some more vets that were infantry guys and other MOSs. Once I got out and went into the civilian side of things, um, and I tell them all the time, like, hey, dude, like, you're Green Beret, you're still picking up brass. Like,
yeah.
doesn't matter. Like, you are picking up brass. Like, at the end of the day, big army's big army, and they still have to take, they're still taking accountability of how many rounds you shoot. You know, maybe a little less in some cases, but for the most part, the math is there.
Yeah.
It's like they're mathing their way through how many rounds you're expending for sure.
There's some
Um,
dumb shit, but it's still the worst day. Well, I wouldn't say the worst day because the worst day as a Green Beret for me was pretty shitty. But the worst day of doing dumb stuff is way better than any
100%.
day in the regular army I ever had.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've heard a lot of that, and like I said, I can only speak for like some of the time that I spent in the guard, and like just something as simple as like, hey, you're gonna sit there until 1700, no matter what. Okay, got it. We're just
That's
gonna
real
just
life,
hang
man.
out.
We trained to
So,
time,
but
not to standard in the
and
regular
and
army.
and I will say, man, that's one thing that not to jump to a different topic here, but like that's one thing that I hope that the army sort of starts to kind of wrap their head around is the value of guys' time, man. Like,
No.
dude, you start taking that away, man. I mean, that is a lot that you're stripping a dude from, man. You really are. And at the very least, I think group kind of understands that, and that was a blessing in and of itself. Like the fact that like you show up to your team, you show up to your place of duty. It's like, hey, once you're done, you met the standard, you did what you had to do. Like, if you want to hang out, do something else, sure. But if you're not, get the fuck out, go home, go spend time with your family, go do what you got to do. Because the fact of the matter is, like, at some point or another, you're gonna not be here. Like, you're not gonna be sleeping in your house. You're gonna be out there getting after it. So enjoy the time that you have now, spend it with your family now, so that you're not regretting it later on. I think that's a great philosophy, man. Especially like just to keep morale up, it helps a lot.
Yeah, that's a phrase from that. If you don't have anything to do, don't do it here. And just
I like it.
go
Yeah.
take care of what you have to take care of because yeah, when group life does get going, this person's at a school. Okay, now they got to go do this, and or you go to JSET. Oh, there's a deployment coming up. Oh, we got red cycle tasking. Oh, we need a guy to go to Mongolia, and all this shit's coming up. And at group proper in Lewis, there, guys would be gone like 1 to 1, but those guys out at 1-1, they were gone like 20 or they'd be gone like 35 months out of 36 months for their tour and shit, just back and
Yeah,
forth. They're never there. That's a rough life.
dude. Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, dude. But again, going back to valuing time, right? So it's despite the fact that, yeah, they're gone often. At the very least, they're doing a thing.
Oh
It's
yeah.
far worse when you take a guy and you're just going to sit here and wait. You're just going to wait till 5 every day. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Why are we, why are we doing this? And I get it, correction. I don't understand the, like, why people do that, but I do understand that it is part of the culture in some cases. I don't necessarily agree with it, but whatever, man. It is what it is, I guess.
If you give soldiers in the regular army any more time, they will fuck something up with it. 100% guaranteed. I mean, you give them, if you give them 6 hours to sleep, if you work them 18 hours a day and they have 6 hours to go to the barracks, sleep, they'll somehow get a DUI in those 6 hours.
Mhm.
I don't know how they do it. They just figure it out.
Yeah.
So,
See,
yeah.
yeah, but it goes back to kind of what we were talking about in the beginning, right? It's like, okay, at some point, these guys are going to end up back in the civilian world. Sooner or later, they will end up being civilians again, and that will, that sort of, overprotection and ensuring that guys aren't getting into trouble, it's taken away from you like that. So it's like, I get it. I totally agree with you in that regard. Like, private's going to private, it's gonna happen. But it's like, all right, at the end of the day, a 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old in the civilian world is not going to have somebody over their shoulder be like, you will stay here till this hour. But then I also understand that it does impact, force readiness and whether you're there and available to train. So there are certain aspects that don't exist in the civilian world. Like, yeah, dude, I mean, if you got a DUI the day before and then you want to go to work, like they'll just fire you. You're done. You're replaced the next day. Getting a DUI in the army, especially like, if you're about to deploy or anything crazy like that, now you just tasked everybody from the bottom up with all sorts of other paperwork and logistics and all this other shenanigans that now they got to deal with. So I get that they're trying to protect that aspect of things. But man, it's like, I don't know. There's pros and cons to the
The
approach.
army doesn't care about the person. They can say all that they
Yes.
want, that they care about the individual person, the human that's in the role, but they don't. They only care about the name and the roster on the piece of paper. It's
Right.
just a job that has to be filled,
Yep.
and that person has to
Yes.
be accountable for duty, present for duty, or accounted for,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And they put out all these programs that say we care about family and we care about the soldiers' mental health. Bullshit. That's not fucking true. It's the
Mhm.
people that work in the army that care about one another, but the army
Yes.
itself has no capacity for emotion. That's
Percent.
all fucking made up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what taxes these people and causes all of these mental health problems and all by ruining the person's life while they're in. But then the soldier gets out, becomes a veteran, says, best 4 years I ever had in my whole life. Thought I wouldn't trade it for a world. The fucking Stockholm syndrome when they get out, that they believed that it was great, but when they were in there, they were fucking miserable. That's
Yeah.
fucked up.
Yeah, man. No, I mean, you're not wrong for sure, dude. But you got to choose your heart, right? Because it's hard. If you don't do it, it's hard. If you do it, it's hard.
Yeah. So,
There is no easy road. And I will say this too. While it sounds ruthless, and I think you're right, that the army at the end of the day, realistically, what they have to keep, what the big army entity is responsible for is ensuring that there is a name inside of a duty. 100%. I agree with you in that regard. And while that is ruthless, it is ruthlessly practical, right? It does fulfill the job. The purpose of the army is that. Um, Especially like, I mean, if you find yourself in like in near peer warfare, at the end of the day it's like, well, we need is numbers.
yeah.
We need to fill these slots. So there is a certain level of pragmatism. Despite it being a ruthless pragmatism, it is pragmatic. um Now, I think outside of the military, I think especially in a wealthy, affluent society like the United States, I think a lot of people take that for granted. This sense of they feel almost entitled to being cared for, and the world has to care about the individual. And the reality is that that's actually not the case when it comes to like bigger picture, uh, big picture society doesn't really care about you. But you're absolutely right in that it is the people around you and that close knit circle of individuals that does. And that's where that sense of community is so important. That's where building that community matters so much. Because I think if anybody goes into the army or the civilian world expecting to be valued by the organization in and of itself, dude, they're setting themselves up for failure.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's a intangible concept. The army in and of itself is an organization, but it is the people that make up the army, right? So where do you find value then as an individual? I mean, yes, you should find value in like what you do and what you have to contribute, but your contribution can only span so far. And the extent of your contribution, generally speaking, is that tight knit community that you build around you. So if you can find purpose in being a cohesive member of that organization, of that immediate community, I think building that sets you up for success. And that's where I think a lot of veterans start to fail because they get out of the military where they had that community and all of a sudden they're almost reluctant or refusing to become a part of this new community. It's either military and veterans or nothing.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts to break down. It starts to break down guys. You have to be able to build that. You have to be able to rebuild that community, and it's exhausting, especially for guys who spent 20 plus years. You're starting over, man. Like you're starting over.
Yeah, it's a whole new
It's
life.
yeah,
And then
for sure,
you can just crawl in a bottle and it'll all go away too. A lot of guys will just take that route of
dude.
self medicating and saying putting it off till
Yeah,
tomorrow, and then they'll just
I
start
mean that.
drinking.
Yeah,
I did
dude, that
that. It
was
was rough.
a hard trip for me. Yeah, dude. That's went through the same thing, man. Yeah, it was immediately after I got out. Like that was one thing that like that was it was tough, man. That was difficult because I mean, the things that I write about again in my book, it's lived experiences, man. I went through that phase of my life where it was like, I don't know who I am anymore because I tied the entirety of my identity, despite not having been in group for that long. And not, I'd spent a better part of 10 years. It was a decade, in a military environment from, simultaneous membership program in Guard Unit all the way till I got my DD 14. It was 10 years, you know? Um, that's a, it was the entirety of my 20s. And then all of a sudden I'm getting out. I'm 31 or 32-ish by the time I'm getting out. And the first month or so, you're like, dude, this is a vibe, man. I can do whatever I want. And then all of a sudden, you're just like, what do I do with my hands? I have no task. I have no purpose. My identity is entirely tied to being a military guy. And now I wish there's a lot of things that I wish I would have done prior to getting out that I hadn't done. But because I didn't set myself up for success. And suddenly I found myself self-medicating. Uh, trying to numb precisely that, that sense of insecurity and insufficiency, you know, drowning out all those emotions and all that, whatever, like it kind of put everything at this mellow sort of status quo where like nothing really mattered and it was just this numbing sensation. You can only do that for so long.
Mm.
And I got to that point, man. I got to that point of like, of physiologically, I was unable to continue to do that, to engage in that behavior. It was just a no. And dude, I had to literally go through a whole program to get out of that rut.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes that. It takes just a hard reset, man. And that's what it took for me, man. It was just this it stops now kind of thing, and it sucked. It sucked. I can tell you that. It definitely sucked, but I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I did it when I did it because twofold. Number one, I have the experience now. So all those guys that are out there that might be watching, that might be listening, whatever it may be, man, like regardless of your hardship, regardless of what you're going through, regardless of like how deep in the bottom you might feel or how reliant you might feel on that, I can tell anyone from experience that it is possible to get out of that. You have to really want it. And sometimes it requires just a hard reset, and I don't think there's any shame in that. On the contrary, especially being, somebody who's gone through the difficulties of group, the difficulties and the challenges that selection and the Q course have to offer. I would almost argue that there's more courage in raising your hand and being like, I need help, than there is to be like, I got this, because you're used to that. Most guys that get out of group, they're used to being like, I got it. Don't worry about it. Hey, you know what? Give me the sandbag, dude. Just throw it on my ruck. I got you. But what they're not used to is being like, hey, I need help. Like I am stuck. It doesn't matter how many people you surround yourself with. The reality is, a lot of dudes just need to raise their hand and be like, I need help. And I wish a part of me sometimes wishes that I could just like grab somebody's hand and raise it for them because it's almost what I was forced to do. But at the end of the day, I'm glad. I'm glad for two reasons. Number one, because I'm here today. You know, had I not gone through that hard reset, I probably wouldn't be here today. And number two, because at the very least, I could later on talk to my son about it and help guide him in that regard and be like, hey, it doesn't matter. Like, regardless of how deep in a rut you might feel like you are, you can get out. It is doable. There's hope. You know, and it's hard to find hope when you are physiologically addicted to alcohol. It is
Yeah,
very difficult, man.
I
Very difficult.
I know what you mean. I am 50 weeks sober today.
Dude, man, congratulations, brother. That is phenomenal, man. That is phenomenal. I'm nearing the year. It'll be August 8th. I'll be a year. August 8th. So I don't know exactly how many weeks it is, but we're probably around kind of the same time for them.
Oh,
But
no, I've
dude,
50 weeks. So 1 year is 2 weeks from now.
oh yeah, oh dude, yeah, you're there. You're there,
Yeah.
man. Then you're
So,
there. That's awesome. Man. But I will say, dude, that's one thing that's been sort of great about like, especially that community of guys who's gone through that. It's you start to understand not only how challenging that could be, but something that might seem simple to somebody else, like, hey, 50 weeks of not, having been in a position where I couldn't imagine a day, 50 weeks, it's just like, holy smoke, dude. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I certainly don't want to speak for you, but at least from my experience, I got to a point where it was like, I couldn't imagine going a whole day without it.
it was bad.
You
I
know,
mean,
it was,
it was pretty bad.
yeah, dude. And for me, like being this far into now, being infinitely more productive now, being there and present, you know, being able
Yeah.
to articulate my thoughts, being able to have this conversation with you, you know, without needing, to resort to a bottle just to open up about stuff, to discuss, to feel like I'm at liberty to have, certain deep conversations. No, man, like, dude, it's a liberating feeling, man. It really is.
It is. It's good. I mean, I can get up and go to the gym every day like I do. I just turned
Yeah,
one addiction into another and back into the gym, which is
100%.
much more healthy. But,
100%.
I'm pretty obsessed with the gym. That's my whole
It's awesome.
thing
It's
now.
awesome.
But now I can do
Yeah.
this, right? I'm not
Yeah.
hungover. I don't have any downtime. I can schedule. I mean, I have interviews every day and I'm just on it every day. And I'm trying to take
That's
my
fantastic,
notes
man.
and get my subjects and like learn all the stuff
Yep.
and be able to run conversation into another and then speak a little more clearly. But yeah, you can't do that if you're getting hammered every night. I don't know
100%.
how we got through the fucking Q course with the amount we drank. And because I've got somebody
Yeah.
coming on, I think next week that has
Yeah.
a pretty good following for one of those programs to train up to go to these special operations
Oh, yeah, yeah.
selections and things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, when I went through, and this wasn't that long ago for everybody listening, this isn't that long ago. I don't remember any of this shit. Maybe because I wasn't big on social media. I
Yeah.
trained myself, I went through the course. We got completely shit housed when we were off, and then we would go to these schools and we would kill it, and then we were off. And
Yep.
I don't remember training like to that level to a program. We just
Mhm.
showed up and fucking did it, and then we left and went to the shopette. So I don't know
Yeah. Yeah.
how
I got
we
you.
got through some of the stuff. And then there's people like going through programs. That's crazy to me. That's crazy. Like, good on them, right? Like, good for you guys
100%.
because
100%.
that group of guys I went through the Q course with could party. And
Yeah.
it was, and I don't remember anybody saying, "Oh, I'm sticking to this program or that." It was everybody all the time. When everybody was off, they were partying, and then when they were on,
Yep.
they were on. And so I'm excited to talk to that guy about that. So,
That'll be cool for sure,
so,
man. That'll be.
so, how did going to combat with a green or with an ODA change you?
How does it change me? I think it definitely put a lot of the world into perspective for me. And what I mean by that is like it took me out of the bubble that is the U.S., took me out of this, this utopia of a world, and really put me in like the middle of like of what the reality is for a lot of cultures outside of here. For one, for two, at least on a personal level, it immediately made me aware of my own mortality. Immediately, because again, it goes back to what we were talking about, how it actually matters there. Yeah, sure, in a training environment, you're obviously incurring a certain level of risk, but at the end of the day, you have your risk management, and you have a freaking medevac vehicle, or it's there, everything is staged, you're ready to act, in any given scenario. In combat, well, yes, you do everything that you can to ensure that you have these adjuncts available. There's only so much you can do, and at the end of the day, the enemy has a boat too, you know. So it certainly put that into perspective. My own mortality. It made the reality of the world, put that into perspective, like the how blessed we are to actually live in a society like the one we live in today. Um, and on top of that, it also made it very clear how unbelievably not reliant, but how you can't escape needing your buddy next to you. That is inescapable, man. If you don't help your guys get to a certain degree of training, if you don't help them get to a certain standard, bro. I mean, it made real that mantra of like you're only as strong as your weakest link. All those different like sayings and this and that, like it all became very real once you're in a combat environment. So I don't know if it necessarily changed. I mean, I'm sure it did actually. I'm sure it changed me, but I feel like a lot of what it changed in me was more so making a lot of these things that I'd already heard. It made them real, and it made them an experience that I was like, okay, this is what that feels like. Which I think it adds value, man, because it's like you can hear a mantra all day, you can hear all these different sayings all day, you can hear, awesome, great. But once you live it, once you experience it, once you come face to face with your own mortality, that's when you're like, okay, time time spent with your family matters. Phone calls before you go and leave the wire matters. You know, all these little things that otherwise you'd be like, kind of like, oh yeah, I might not do it. Like those things begin to matter, man. It's like it really sets in your mind a definitive list of priorities, the things that matter most, and the things that you're just like, do I really need to? Like at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, listeners know this. All my experience is secondhand, right? And I gotta
Mm-hmm.
talk to people about their experiences and what they thought about things and how they, what they thought they were doing over there and how it was with the people they were with. And that's what it boils down to, right? Because you're there for the team. You're not really there for the greater mission. You'll go and run missions and shit, but you're got for the guy left and the right of you.
Yeah.
And it's all that and the ODA is something else, right? Because that's a fucking super team. You got 12 bad motherfuckers on a team that can, you know, potentially take down a government of a country. What did you feel like you were accomplishing when you were over there? Or did you feel like you were going to accomplish anything while you were there?
It's hard to say because again, I was fresh out of the Q course, right? So coming out of the Q course and getting put into a combat environment, right? Yeah. I mean, the fact of the matter is, like I think most of your listeners understand sort of the echelons of like, tactical, operational, strategic. Being fresh out of the Q course, you're still learning the tactical side of things. Like you're learning that that initial tier of things, but you're immediately, at least from my experience, you're immediately confronted with the operational impacts that your missions have, and you kind of see the, shimmers of the strategic, but not to the depth that you do, especially like guys that I call SF Yodas, like guys that were there from the beginning of G1 all the way up to the end. They've seen everything, and they've seen how at a grand scale things have changed. So did I feel like that I was necessarily making an impact? I felt like I was contributing to a cause, and that was primarily the immediate mission that we were presented with, which at the time was during the Trump administration, the first Trump administration. The general gist of our mission set was this was during the time frame wherein Trump and Taliban leadership were having talks and negotiations, etc. Uh, the general gist of our mission set was to essentially kill enough of the Taliban to force them to the negotiating table. So it was constantly going on a pretty steady basis and moving to contact, right? Looking for those gunfights, and again, doing anything and everything that we could to impact that. Now, without getting into too much detail, were there other things that were also going on? I'm sure. With that being said, the immediate sort of in your face mission set was that. And so in that degree, I felt like, yes, we're definitely contributing. Like we're doing a thing, we're getting after it. Like we have a decent tempo, especially talking to other guys. It's like we have a sustainable tempo of missions. You know, it was like one night in, one night out, one night in, one night out. You know, there was guys, like I said, like those SF Yodas who were there for freaking ever. I mean, those guys would be out on patrol for days, etc. Like we never had to do that, where we were out there for an extended period of time, but we were constantly in and out of the wire. Um, so yeah, I mean, I definitely felt like I was contributing while I was there. Where it really kind of was a punch in the gut, man, was the Afghanistan withdrawal. That was what sort of changed the game, and I think it really. I mean, again, I can't speak for them, but I can only imagine those guys that were there from again the beginning of GWAP. That had to have been just like what the, like what, you know? Like it would have been one thing to go and immediately withdraw and have the newly instituted Afghan government, as corrupt as it may or may not have been, whatever. At least it wasn't the Taliban. But to go from a presence there for 20 years right back to the hands of the people that we took Afghanistan from, and then on top of that, better armed, better equipped. That was just it was a shock. It was a shock to the system, man, for sure.
Yeah. I posed that question, what did you think when you saw Americans being lifted out by chopper from the embassy in Afghanistan or where that building, the picture to Perry Blackburn,
Yeah,
and it just has pissed him off, it eats him alive, right? One of the first guys into the country. And I feel for a lot of the guys, right? Because that's just, I mean, even to me, I never went. I had friends that didn't come back, and the
mm-hmm.
one. Appalling, just appalling, terrible. That's where you're really like, what the fuck were we even there for, right?
Yeah, dude. Yep.
It's crazy, right? You see that shit, and then we're pulling out of Afghanistan, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yep.
And you were on the deployment where a good friend of mine was killed, Jeremy, and that's just like you look back, you go, what the fuck were we even doing there, right? And I think I said earlier, like the 30,000 foot view is we're trying to stop an attack from happening on American soil. But not what if, you don't think of that shit when your friend gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
No.
he was an Alpha company, 3rd Battalion. Where were you guys at the time when all that happened?
Like where in Afghanistan were we?
Well, just in the vicinity, or no, you weren't anywhere near there.
No, 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 no.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you hear
I heard something.
that? Jesus Christ. No, so we were not immediately in the vicinity, if I recall correct. It was, man, dude, I'm trying to remember. You're bringing me back now, dude. I don't want to say that we were sufficiently close where it was like, QRF
QRF close.
required or anything. Yeah, yeah. We were not QRF close. We were definitely
Yeah.
not QRF close. Not to the best of my recollection, we were not. But I know that RFST was spun up. Like people were already tracking what was going on.
Yeah.
So there were definitely a lot of assets that were getting spun up in our like where we were at. Uh,
That was
but
rough, man. I remember I got the Facebook Messenger
yeah.
from my buddy that night, and
Mhm.
I was pissed. I was mad.
You know
And
what?
he's a
Yeah.
like. Did you know him at all?
No, 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 no. I did not.
Fucking like solid, like a
Yeah.
real Green Beret, like a bad dude, And his team loved him, and everybody's just a really nice guy. And
What was his last name, brother?
Griffin.
Yeah, yeah, Jeremy Griffin. Yep, that's right.
So every year, the week before Memorial Day weekend, over at the CrossFit gym, we
Yeah.
do the Hero WOD in honor of Jeremy every year, and that's really cool. So CrossFit Syndicate in Waterford, Wisconsin,
Yeah.
every year for the week before Memorial Day, we do that, and that's really cool of them. We do that, and
That's awesome.
yeah, I go up there and I talk about them and I tell a little story and everything. But yeah, it's just hard. That's one of the things I think about is like what we because I get hung up on I never got to deploy with a team and shit like that happens. Guys
Mhm.
die or guys get hurt. I got hurt in training, but it's like this kind of selfish thing to have wanted to go to do that, but we trained to do that, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
always have this like
Absolutely.
back and forth with myself of, well, maybe it's for the best. Well, is it? But yeah, we committed a big part of our psyche and our life to this purpose, and it's kind of weird to say to somebody that either got to do it or just never even joined. It's weird to feel down on myself because I didn't get to do that one thing.
For sure.
So, and then people that go, they tell me, "Oh, you didn't miss out on anything." Well, I don't know about that. I don't know
Mm.
because I don't know. It's that always that one thing. But that's the thing about SF, and from doing these interviews, right? Is I've interviewed other people that have long 20 some year careers that didn't do that either. That's just the way their career went. They went, the Intel route. And that can
Mhm.
happen in SF is where you kind of you are deploying, but you're not kicking indoors or anything. You're more
Yeah,
doing
dude.
the sneaky poopy stuff. So
Hmm.
it's crazy to hang up on that one thing. It is something though.
It is, man. And I think you hit on it, man, when you said like it's what we train for. It's almost like the ultimate Colex, if you will. When you really start thinking about it and you start really kind of deciding as to whether or not, it was worth it, so on and so forth. Man, I can't help but go back to that point that I made earlier, dude. It's like control the controllables, influence the variables, right? It's like, okay, like I can't do anything about what any one administration is going to do in any one country. I can't. I can't impact that at all. And frankly, they have a purview that I don't have. Would I make those same decisions if I were in their shoes? I have no idea, man. I can't speak on that necessarily. All I can do is hope that these individuals don't make those decisions lightly. I can't imagine being so callous that it would be an easy decision for me to make, but I also don't know. I don't know. It's hard for me to say like, oh yeah, they're just like whatever. But I mean, then you see how certain decisions are made for certain interests, and then all of a sudden you start to think, well, you know what? Maybe there are some decisions that are made in a very callous manner. Maybe, you know, going back to what we were talking about, the degree of how much you matter to any one individual or any one organization is that minuscule, and you really have to find value in your immediate surroundings and in your immediate community because at above strategic levels, at like political and diplomatic levels, dude, nobody even knows you exist. You know,
No.
so to if I tie my value to the impact that me as an individual, as as Chris, the individual, the impact that I had in Afghanistan. Oh, dude, like if that were the extent of where I found value, I would find zero value, zero, absolutely, because where is it now? And that's why it's so difficult to find. It's difficult for me to try to convince any one person to find value and purpose in what they do for a career or what they do on the day to day. Your true value and purpose should come from, at least in my personal opinion, should come more so. It really does come down to like the relationships that you build, man. Like not to be particularly cheesy, but the fact of the matter is it's true, dude. Like they've done countless studies. What people really care about when they're dying is not like, damn it, man, I really wish I would have freaking deployed, or I wish I would have done X, Y, Z. Like they care about the people that are there with them. You know, like are your kids there? Is your spouse there? Are your parents there? The people that you love, the people that love you, like do you feel appreciated and loved? Like that's where a lot at the end of the day, at the end of it all, when you are in your deathbed, whatever, however that may look, that's what you have. That's all that you leave. Is it's a legacy. Whether we like it or not, everybody leaves some sort of a legacy. Whether it's one that you're proud of or not, that's a whole different story. But we all leave one. Through our actions or inactions, we all leave a legacy.
Oh yeah. 400 trillion to 1 odds that you'll be born, 1 to 1 odds that you'll die.
That's it. Yeah, yeah, that's it, man. You
So,
could not have put it better myself, man. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So yeah, I mean, believe me, man, it sucked seeing that Afghanistan pull out. I mean, it was ridiculously absurd. I mean, that doesn't even those words don't do justice, man. Like it was egregious. It really was. At the end of the day, like, is there some value that may come out of that and those decisions made at echelons far higher than mine ever were? That's certainly a possibility. It's hard to tell even now. Who knows the second, third, fourth, fifth order effects that those decisions have or had. Uh, I can, I can, I think there's an argument to be made that to a certain degree it emboldened some of our other foreign adversaries to make decisions that perhaps they wouldn't otherwise have made, i.e., Russia's push into Ukraine, uh, some of the decisions that China made when it came to the diplomatic or strategic competition and whatnot. I think it certainly emboldened some of our foreign adversaries. But again, that's still in the grand scheme of the impact that decisions like that have. That's still pretty well within like it's too close to say like,
yeah.
hey, this is the ultimate impact that these kind of decisions have had.
What do you think of that? Like, it's one thing to support some allies or whatever, but to
Mhm.
support someone and keep a war going where people are fucking dying and
Yeah.
just keep it going and then it's just a slaughter, right? Because it's one thing
Mhm.
when the US is fighting somebody,
Mhm.
and the US, you're backed by this huge war machine and you know, as far as war goes, the best conditions you can have, right?
Yeah.
Because we're going in places, we're building bases and we're all this shit, but not in fucking Ukraine. They are
Mhm.
fucking beating the shit out of each other in
Mhm.
ditches and fucking dropping grenades on each other and drones and just slaughtering people, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to prop that up and just keep dumping in there and say we need to support this and just keep this thing up, and the people saying these things and pushing this have no
Mhm.
idea what it's like. How do you, as somebody who's been to combat and seen something like that, how do you feel about that? Of people making the decisions that have no idea what it's like to fucking shoot somebody or anything like that, or so to see what the terrible things, and then the mental aspect on the population and the veterans that are left afterwards, and the devastation of just keeping
Mhm.
this going. What do you think of all that?
Dude, I mean, I think it's all remnants of what happens when your economy is very heavily based on suffering, right? I mean, simply put, it really is. Like we the war machine needs to be fed, and you cannot feed it. You cannot feed the war machine peace. You know, you can't. Yeah, we're talking about the military industrial complex to a degree, but it is a reality, man. Like you cannot you cannot fund these too big to fail companies without there being war, and it's either us or someone else, right? It, that is a problem with having an economy that's based on that, right? It's the same thing with for example big pharma and disease. You cannot have big pharma unless you perpetuate disease, right? So we can act under the guise of like, okay, war is inevitable and disease is inevitable. While that may be the case, if you monetize from it, well, then now you suddenly find yourself in a situation where you encourage it. There is no incentive to end a war when you profit off it. There's no incentive to end disease when you profit off it. So I mean, I think that those are the inevitable outcomes. The war in Ukraine is the inevitable outcome of an economy that's heavily based on that. You have massive corporations like BlackRock that are again too big to fail, and a lot of people sort of I think part of the picture is 100% capitalizing and monetizing and financially benefiting from war, but where people kind of start to lose the general populace is, well, what happens after, right? That's when the big money's made. the rebuilding, restructuring, implementing all these different systems that that were otherwise not present in those countries. That's when you start making the big bucks. I mean, that's precisely where like a lot of organizations will capitalize. Because it's easy to you can only blow something up so many times. You know,
Hmm.
but there is a lot of money to be made in the quote unquote rebuilding. So that's where like a lot of like the current issues that are going on, why uh they're so hyper polarized, and I think that it's having such a big effect on like on the civilian perception of how the government functions is with organization or committees or powers like Doge coming out and kind of exposing a lot of the things that like USAID is doing or has been doing or what they were funding. You know, a lot of those quote unquote investments, that's all heavily dependent on these rebuilding strategy, right?
Oh,
There is,
come on. You're not telling me there's waste out there, are you? You're not going to start
I
waving
know, right?
that
Yeah.
flag that
Are
there's
you are
waste
you
in the
telling? Yeah,
government?
right.
Get the fuck off my podcast.
Right. Dude, but it's crazy how many people will actually take that ideology or that opinion rather. They'll look at it and be like, what? They'll be just flabbergasted at the fact that like anyone is going out there being like, hey, we could have spent this money significantly better, and then you put a receipt in their face and they're like, no, that can't possibly be true. You know? So I don't know,
One of my
man.
guests said opportunity cost, right? The loss of
Uh,
opportunity with
yeah,
all
yeah,
of that money too. Is yeah, we're saving this, we've lost that money, but the opportunity for greater things that we
yeah.
lost is immeasurable.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack, right? A Civil War
For
general
sure.
said, it's a good thing war is so terrible, otherwise we'd become too fond of it. But now that's the whole thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I'm reading his book now, and I actually have it here next to me. Congressman Mike Waltz, prior GB as well. He wrote another book that I actually really like. I read it before I went to the queue, and he wrote a book called Warrior Diplomat. And in it, he makes a point of like why he believes that what we should have is a sort of rather than an all volunteer force, we should consider the possibility of having just like mandatory service for everybody,
Yeah.
and just consistently drafting individuals, because the incentive then by the general population is to end the war. When you're forced to go to war, if it happens, then you're incentivized to end it, end it fast, because nobody wants to be there. Anyone who's been to war knows that they don't want to necessarily be there. It's precisely why any UFC fighter and any individual who's actually trained in combat, like in combatives, will always leave that as the last resort, because they
Yeah.
know the reality of what that actually means to have to resort to those measures. You know, so I thought he made a very compelling argument in that regard, man. He makes the point that like
It's
if we
true.
don't yeah if we didn't have an all volunteer force like the one that we have now, we would be less inclined to continue on these perpetual, long-standing 10, 20 plus year wars.
Yeah. Have you ever been to a country that has a standing military that is conscripted, mandatory service?
I, I've never been to one per se, but I have talked to, worked with, and hung out with a lot of my buddies that are from Israel, and they're like, well, Israel's a little bit different, I think, because they have like their hostile powers immediately next door. However,
Yeah.
none of them are particularly like ecstatic about going to war. Like what was it, the October 7th? Like, was it October 7th attacks that happened in Israel?
That was the initiation. Yeah. The first day
Yeah,
attack. Yeah.
yeah, dude. I mean, everybody that I talked to that had family, a lot of them had family that suffered through that. Not a single one of them, not a single one of them was like, "Let's do it, man. We're getting after it now. We're gonna go smoke them." It was more so just like, we have to, and we have to do it fast, and we have to end it fast.
Yeah.
Because the immediate threat was there, and they knew that they had to act immediately and end it as soon as possible so as to mitigate loss of life. You know, but again, all these people were forced to be in those roles. It's what you do in Israel. You are required to be there, and everybody had to show up. That's it. With that being said, no one wants that war, especially like the people that are fighting. No one wants it to go on for endless, decades at a time. I've never met someone who's fighting that conflict who's been like, I hope that this goes on forever. I haven't. I have every single one of them that had to
There's
go.
probably some psychopath that's like,
I'm sure,
yes.
dude. Yeah, man. But at that point, it's just dude, right. You're talking about the one dude. He's like, there's
It's
the
just
one
Rick,
guy.
just one guy named Rick in the back, just egging everybody on. Yeah,
Let's
lob that
go.
mortar. Fuck, let's fucking go. All right, so
Yeah.
we wrap that deployment up. We get back to base, and you didn't stay in group too much longer after that,
Yep.
then,
Well,
right?
here's what sucked, bro. When I
Oh
got
boy,
back,
it gets
co-
worse.
uh, COVID,
COVID.
COVID, bro. So just shuts everything down, man. Just shuts everything down. So that right there was kind of just like, dude, what the like we had, trips to Thailand, trips to the Philippines planned, etc. And that's, everybody talks about those, especially in first group, like, dude, it's a good time, man. You get to experience all that stuff. It's awesome.
Oh, is that
Can't
where
deny
first
that.
group goes? Oh, I was
Yeah,
totally on
yeah.
a.
The good old Indo-Paycom area, that little,
I
just
must have missed that
good
brief.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
Well, dude, so they talk about now. The good thing that I did get to do after that was we started. Let me see. How to put it? Guam is now officially like a thing, where like there's a lot of Marines there, and so we got to do a lot of kind of like the setting up for all that. So I got to spend some time in like that general vicinity of like Guam, which I had never been to, man. Like, and that was a phenomenal place to go, and just to see that let me peer a little bit more into the operational slash strategic side of things. Like that kind of level. It was less so tactical at that point, though there was still some of it, but it was significantly reduced and more so focusing on like the bigger picture implications of the bigger picture implications that what you're doing will ultimately have on the potential battlefield overall. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool to actually like, get to see, and I'm glad I got that experience from it for sure. Because as much as I appreciated my combat experience, at the very least, like having that trip out to that general area and seeing some of those networks get implemented and the things that go on, in that realm of things, like that helped a lot to sort of see a broader picture of what group does as a whole. It gave me, kind of both sides of group. More, the tactical, like combat side, and also like staging the operational strategic side of things.
Bro, I was in group and I, thought I had a pretty good understanding. I have no fucking idea all the shit that goes on in group and the
Yeah,
different levels and all the shit going on. And if I don't know, man, the general public has no understanding of all the shit going on at one
dude,
time all over the world that we're got our
one
fingers in. It's just
hundred percent.
fucking crazy. You push back a curtain and then it's just a fucking warehouse of curtains and shit,
Yeah,
and you get read on to different things like, oh fuck, my god.
dude, absolutely, man. And so that's why sometimes like I can't help but kind of, how do I say it? Like when I hear, friends of mine now that are, on the civilian side and kind of express their opinions in regards to what we're doing in certain countries. I'm like, dude, like I get it. I understand where you're coming from, given what you know and what you're privy to. But if you saw just even a little bit beyond that, just kind of, what to them is that 30,000 foot view, you know, then you kind of get a better gist as to the why, and that's why going back to the original question of understanding the implications of, the Afghanistan pullout, that's my 30,000 foot view. Like I didn't get that view. Like I don't know the political side of things. I don't know what's happening in those rooms when they're discussing these different, diplomatic discussions and how it's going to impact how the pullout from Afghanistan is going to impact Pakistan relations and relations with India and China and their Belt and Road Initiative. Like, holy, dude, holy smokes, man, that's
Oh
like
yeah.
huge picture stuff.
that's that's one thing when you kind of get a sense for what all's going on in the world, right? And then
Yeah,
in the civilian side, civilians have a perception of events that happen in the world, and their perception is based on what they're getting from the media, and what the media is telling them isn't what happened.
100%.
And so they have an opinion on something that didn't happen.
Yeah,
And then you can't, there's no, you've bifurcated the truth, right? You're
mm-hmm.
just over here, which is your truth. You obviously believe, and
Yes.
you can have your opinion and whatever, but It's not your fault because that's what you're being told.
Mhm.
And that's your source. And it's a lot of work, right? Because everybody has lives. Everybody's got a
Yeah.
normal life that they got to live their life. You got to pay their bills and go to school or go to work and shit. And they don't have time to dig into what actually happened. And
Yeah, dude.
but in the end, does it affect their lives? Well, it might. It can affect elections. It can affect politics,
For
your
sure.
relationship with your families and shit like that. So yeah,
Yeah, well, I
it's
mean,
strange.
especially in today's day and age, man. Yeah, where like politics has become so polarizing, man. It's crazy. I feel like that kind of happened like from one day to the next, man. And I can tell you, at least from my experience, like I was never really into politics until COVID. And I think part of it is I had time to get into politics, and number two, the immediate effects of like what of the decisions that were being made at the highest levels of power had immediate impacts on my life and the lives of my family and my immediate surroundings. You know, so now, granted, I feel like that's probably always the case. You're just so you're just like you were saying, you're just so caught up in the fog of like your day to day and what you're doing at work and what you're doing here that you don't have time to stop and think like, hey, the reason I'm having to do this is because this guy freaking decided to do X, Y, Z, you know?
Yeah.
But at least for me, COVID was really kind of like took me back. And since then, man, I feel like that's really what's made politics a much more of a kitchen table discussion in a lot of households in the U.S. right now. Um, and across the world, it almost feels like that. Now I would hate to assume that that's the case because I don't know, like it's kind of one of those things where it's almost like it's almost narcissistic for me to assume that that's what's happening in every one place. But I can tell you, it certainly feels like people have much more access to and are very much opinionated in politics as a whole in today's day and age. Contrary or at least juxtaposed to uh, 5 years ago. Maybe 10 years ago.
Well, it takes 2, 3, 4 hours to have a conversation like this, right? To just sit down
Yeah,
and talk and, see things from your point of view, you see things from my point of view. That takes an awful long time. But your
for
attention
sure.
span has now been distilled down to 15 seconds. How long does the average person watch a reel? 9 seconds, nine and a
Holy
half
smokes!
seconds, or something
Yeah,
like
well,
that?
yeah, yeah, about that. I think the longest they could probably go is probably 30 seconds before you lose
That's
somebody, right?
when I look at my numbers and stuff, most people watch the reel for like 9, 10 seconds. I
Yeah,
mean, and then the
yeah,
longest
dude.
reel you can have is 3 seconds, and or 3 minutes, and nobody's watching a 3 minute reel unless
No
it's
way,
really
dude.
fucking interesting.
Yep, yep, yep.
So that's everybody's attention span now. Go ahead.
No, no, I was gonna say like I've now, especially with the book and a couple other projects that I'm working on that I'm happy to talk about here whenever. Uh, Especially with the book, I've gotten significantly more involved in social media and trying to like build a presence there. And I can tell you, man, like I see the same metrics in regards to like reels posted and different things. And yeah, it is like it better be a captivating freaking video for you to get like a considerable. Like it even shows you like, especially on Instagram primarily, like it shows you like how much time is spent. Yeah, it's like the longer the video, you see these drop offs of just attention span, and that's a problem. That's a problem. I think it's a bigger problem than people give it for anyone that's trying to kind of build a presence on social media, which in today's day and age is it's really how you build a position for yourself to actually like have an opinion, or for your opinion to have any weight, you have to have a big social media presence. You really do. Otherwise it goes back to if a tree fell and no one heard it. Because that's precisely what ends up happening. But for anyone who's actually like going into social media and trying to build a presence there, man, it's like it's a game changer having to like distill any one point to 5, 10 seconds of attention span, and if you get that, like you're good. You're on to something. Because there's just so much out there, man. I mean, we're just in constant feed mode, feed mode, feed mode. But it's a daunting task in and of itself to build a following like that, for sure.
Fill the file and get correct information out. And
Yeah, dude.
I'll watch reels and I'd be like, that's not true. And it's got a million views or some shit. I go, that's not fucking true at all. But good on it, I mean, people are figure it out and they're successful, and hopefully people can see through other people's bullshit. But
Yeah, dude.
so you decide to get out. What pushed that decision there?
Dude, so okay, I found myself, so I was at that point, right, where it was like, okay, I had just turned 31 or 32, I think. Yeah, right around there. I was like, okay, I have two options, right? A part of me wanted to go the PA route. I definitely wanted to practice medicine in the civilian side at some point in my life. That was kind of one of the things that I wanted to do. Whether or not I'll end up doing that, I don't 100% know. And again, it goes back to some of the projects that I'm kind of working on right now. Um, and I have a pretty big uh, intention of pursuing. Still ties everything together, but suffice to say, I wanted to start a family, and I think that that was kind of one of those like deal breaker moments for my wife in particular. And I knew that I had to kind of like start weighing those options, right? So like I knew I wanted to have a family, I knew I wanted to have kids, and you know like like most wives, I feel like she was less inclined to do so with someone who was potentially not going to be there very often. It puts a lot of the onus on her, and her career is also a very demanding career. Like I mentioned, she's a doctor, so she's constantly on call or in the OR, whatever it may be. But she's busy on a regular basis. I'm busy on a regular basis, but we both want to have a family. Um, so it came down to that, man. It was like, all right, are we going to be careerists, both of us, and and supplant having children for our career, or are we going to make it a priority to have a family and have our careers build a family? And I think that's the decision that we both made. Um, she's made sacrifices in her career. I've made sacrifices in my career. That's something that I was, very heavily invested in. I thoroughly enjoyed the little time that I did spend in group. I had a phenomenal time. Just the type of people that I met, the individuals that I met, like well aligned with my personality, my thought process, my mentality. Like awesome. And the experience that I had was a phenomenal experience that I know a lot of guys who didn't have the experience that I had, and I'm like, dude, I recommend it. I was actually just on another podcast, and the guy that I was talking to, he asked me, he was like, "Hey, would you encourage your son to join the military?" And I was like, "Dude, given my experience, 100%, man. Like the things that I learned, the values that were harped on, the degree of the evolution that I had, the degree of evolution, how I changed from 20 something year old that didn't really know much about anything. I thought I did that because every 20-year-old thinks they got it all figured out." And then all of a sudden you hit 30 and you're like, I didn't know a goddamn thing. That humility sort of starts to kick in, and I'm like, man, like I learned a lot. And now you can really start putting that into practice. That sort of like that humble development starts going into play. Like all those things were things that I got out of the military, that this level of growth, level of independence, um, like I mentioned, values, a strong moral compass, like 100% owe it to my experience in the military. So yeah, I would absolutely encourage my son to join. But it really came down to that, man. It's like I wouldn't have a son to encourage to do that if I hadn't gotten out at the time, just given the decisions that my wife and I had ultimately come to. So a part of me is like, man, do I wish I would have stayed in? Yeah. A part of me does wish that, because I really enjoyed my time in group. Now, with that being said, did I get a lot out of the military that I can pass on to my son, and I think to a lot of the people outside of the military? 100%, I did. Did I get the whole picture of what group is and does? No, no. And I
Well,
certainly,
you didn't, start a family and then wreck your family like is a popular choice in group
that's
is to
that's fair. Yeah,
completely torpedo your life in search of just keeping going to that next level and that next level. So you skip that step
yeah,
at
yeah.
least.
I mean, that's actually a very good point, actually, and no one has really presented it that way, and I think that that's actually a good way to look at it too. It's the other side of the coin, right? That's not to say that that they're mutually exclusive. That it's like you either wreck your family and stay in group, or you get out and don't wreck your family. Like it's certainly possible to do both, but man, it is few and far between. Man, there's a
Yeah.
reason why. Yeah, there's a reason why the divorce rates are so incredibly high in group, and even higher, from at least from what I've heard and what I've read, even higher for guys who go on and do other things after group. Like
Yeah.
you're just not, you're never there, dude. You're never there, and it's hard to justify staying, having a 9 to 5 when you know the impact that you can have in group.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to be like, oh yeah, dude, 100%. Yeah, I'd much rather do this 9 to 5, day job than than I don't know, go topple government somewhere else. It's like, dude,
Yeah, there's no comparison. There's no comparison to the team room, to the camaraderie, to the brotherhood, to the hallway.
100%.
Having a
Yeah, yeah.
beer on Friday, opening the beer fridge, having a Friday, or having a team party, getting together with the guys.
Hell yeah, dude. Yep.
There's no comparison to it when you were on the team
Yep.
and had that little invisibility shield, or invincibility shield wrapped
I got
around
you.
you, and
Yeah.
it's yeah, there's nothing like it. But to make the
Yeah, man.
choice, and that's why I've heard from the young, they're like, yeah, I made a choice for family, because I think it's in the back of guys' minds. Like, if I stay here, I'm going to give up everything for this place. And that's what
Mhm.
SF is, really. Special Forces will take everything from you
Everything.
if you let it. It'll even take your life, and
Yeah.
it'll give you everything you want, but it's gonna end one day. It's gonna be over, and you're gonna have to get out of regiment and get out of the army and go back to regular life, and it's not gonna
Yep.
be there for you. It's just gonna be the guys that are left, the people that were in the positions, and they're gonna go off and do their own thing, and then eventually they won't be there for you, and all you'll have is
Yeah, dude.
nothing. And if you don't take care of what you have while you're in, you won't have anything when you get out. You'll just have a
Dude,
plaque up on the wall and
that's it.
sitting in a basement having a podcast. No, wait, shit.
Oh, wait a minute.
Um,
Sounds
Wait a
awfully
minute.
familiar.
Wait a minute. You're being awfully specific here. No, but that's it. It will take everything from you if you let it. And some guys have the wherewithal to say, "I'm not going to let it take it from me," because maybe they know. Maybe they know that if they keep going after it, that they'll get addicted, like guys do. Because you've seen it. Guys are just, I want to go to this school. I want to go to this training. I want to go on this deployment. I want to go to this, and it's never enough. They'll never say no. They want to do everything. I wanted to do everything. Fuck,
Yeah.
there's people that are still in. They call me right now. I'd go, I'd go fucking figure it out if they need help.
Yeah.
But that's just what comes along with it.
Yeah,
So
man. No, for sure, dude. And I totally I understand the logic. I understand the thought process behind that. Going back to what I kind of mentioned briefly is on your deathbed, when that's it, man, when it's lights out, like what matters most? What matters most, And
I
that's
just hope they put that beret in my hand and fucking chuck me in the
right.
dumpster, because
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
Right. Yeah, man. Hey, dude. But you know what? Some guys that might be it, man. That's what they want. Hey, dude, send it, bro. That's awesome. Me personally, what I wanted was family, man. I wanted a wife, I wanted a kid, and I wanted to take the experiences that I've had so far, help my son become better than I was, you know, and then build that. Again, that is not to say that you cannot do that and also get group. However, my point is that it is incredibly difficult. And like you said, I mean, whatever, I may have spent minimal amount of time in group. I've seen it countless times. Guys that are there for decades on end who they don't have a family. They don't. They don't. The extent of what they have is their buddies to the left and right, which is great. That's awesome. But those guys won't be there forever either. You know? And
Yeah.
that's a fact of life, man. That is a fact of life. And again, it goes back to ensuring that like where you hang that mantle of purpose and meaning. It cannot if you hang it on something that's transient, you are setting yourself up for failure. 100% setting yourself up for failure.
Oh yeah.
No
But
one, no one could, no one could take your family away from you. No one, and what I mean by that is like at the end of the day, right? If you're a dad, you're a dad forever. If you're a mom forever. And the fact that I'm personally of the belief that if you're a spouse, you are a spouse forever. At the very least, you should approach it with that mentality. And that's coming from somebody who I have a divorce under my belt. I know what it's like to lose, to not to have to go through that. Now, granted, it was also like I'm pretty sure it was like a prerequisite to get into group. You have to,
you're not infantry till your first divorce, and you're not special forces till
right?
your second divorce.
Oh, okay, goddamn. All right, well then, fuck. I guess.
You
All
can
right.
still wear your combat infantryman badge.
Okay. All right. Sweet. All right. So I got that. But dude, I mean, it's a reality, man. Dude, I try to approach, and those are the things that like I mentioned, it's like who do you want next to you on your deathbed? Like that's what's gonna matter. And I tried my best, and I'm gonna continue to do my best to make sure that at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, at the very least, if I can make sure that I was a good husband and a good father, that I'll have that immediate family there with me and for me. I always say, there's three intimacies in life. There's when you're born, when you actually make love, like truly love somebody, and then there's when you die. Those are the three intimacies. Who you're with during those instances matter. It's life changing circumstances. It's unforgettable circumstances. You're gonna know. Like, you're gonna know. So I don't know. We'll see, man. But I think I made the right decision. I hope. That's it, man. Like, I made the decision that I made to get out. And I'll tell you, I certainly do not regret having my son next to me and raising him and being there with him and being there for him. And I'm glad that at the very least I got to experience combat. I got to experience that, and I can share that with my son and with the world.
Hey, as I say, man, it's gonna do what it do, baby. You know?
That's it, dude. That's
Did
it.
you get everything you wanted to get out of group when you said, I'm gonna go to selection? Did you get everything out of it you wanted to?
That's interesting, man. Because that's interesting because I actually just had this conversation with one of my buddies. I'm inclined to say no, not because group didn't provide, but because I wasn't there long enough to experience it. Uh, I think there was definitely some schools that I really wanted to go to that I think would have significantly highlighted not only my experience in group, but also the reality of what group does a lot more, primarily on like still within group, but some of like the, more secret scroll stuff that group does. There's some stuff there. Like, I think this is,
Those are ones I wish I would have gotten.
yeah,
There's some transferable skills there into the private
one
sector that
hundred percent.
the jobs are so interesting.
Yes.
And I'm like,
Yes.
I look at it and I go, oh, I don't have that. Oh, I don't have that. And I just, man, when those jobs pop up, that's when I get down on myself
Hmm.
that I didn't, because I didn't get any schools. I got none. Every time I'd get one, something would come up and I'd have to pull out of it, or I'd have symptoms, or
Yeah,
some crazy person popped up in my life. And
I
I mean,
got you.
yeah, that's when I get down on myself. Is I go, man, you were a fucking Green Beret and you can't even go to this basic fucking job because you didn't go to this fucking basic school that everybody fucking went to.
Yeah, I got you. I got you. Yeah, dude.
And
Eh, Yeah,
it's tough. That one's tough to
yeah,
swallow.
yeah, man, for sure, for sure. And again, I attribute that largely also to, at least from my experience, COVID kind of tanked a lot of those experiences that I could have potentially had. Because, dude, I mean, you remember, like, everything was shut down. Like no one was going anywhere. Like, nothing was happening. Like,
I live in Wisconsin, so it was pretty normal here.
oh, dude. Well, then, yeah, okay. Look, well, okay. I'm sure you remember the old liberal
I
cities
saw
then.
it. I saw it on the news.
Yeah,
Some
dude.
people
Yeah.
had some sniffles.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
They
Yeah,
just they
dude.
just acted like it just wasn't a thing here in most of the places. In the cities, it was a thing, but where
Yeah.
I mean, you drive 10 minutes from my house and it's farm forever.
Dude, yeah, man, that's awesome, bro. And I feel like for the most part, like, a lot of, okay, it certainly helps just being in that sort of area, like more rural areas, because obviously you're not in immediate proximity to like a lot of people on a regular basis. So it certainly helps kind of like to stop the spread to a certain degree. But you're not going to. You're not going to. And it goes this ties in perfectly to what we were discussing, where it comes to like, individuals in positions of power at a political
Here we
level.
go. We're getting
You
political
know?
again.
Oh, 100%. I mean, dude, you can't. What's the von Clausewitz quote? War is politics by other means.
There you
It's
go.
like it really is. So it's the fact of the matter is, it's just it all ties together, man. And a lot of the decisions that were made during COVID, I mean, it either exacerbated certain political ideologies, or I'll tell you what, if it didn't do that, it certainly divided a lot. A lot of I can't remember who it was, but he dubbed it mass formation psychosis, where like if you do not wear the mask, you are the evil villain, you are the worst, you're here to kill everyone. It's just like, holy smokes, man! But that
It
was big
definitely.
in Tacoma, that was big in Seattle.
Oh yeah. And I did get a new perspective on it when I spoke to. I went to Western North Carolina to do some hurricane relief efforts down
Oh,
there, right?
nice.
and
Yeah.
there was a medic down there. Yeah, he was a medic, and we were, COVID came up, and I said, yeah, just, Wisconsin. And he goes, yeah, I get that. And I said, well, where were you during when it exploded? And he said, downtown San Francisco. And what he described sounded pretty hellish. Just people just dropping dead, dying on the way to the ambulance. They're fine, and then they're dead. The amount of calls deep that they had to dig themselves out of, they were just back to back for
Hmm.
their whole shift, and they're running them. And he said usually, on a busy day, there would be -1 or -2 ambulances, right? And
Right.
he was describing in the 60s or 70s,
Hmm.
and this is at the outbreak of things. But this is in downtown a city. So you go
Right.
from that
Right.
one extreme, from that person's view, and from that
Hmm.
person, and in the acute, that's all you see is you see that
Right.
perspective. But you go to fucking anywhere in North Dakota, and I guarantee you most of those people were not affected at all by
Hmm.
COVID at
Yeah.
all. So
Yeah, dude.
the two polar opposite things, complete
For sure.
segregation or a mass population in a concentrated area. And is everybody going to see from everybody else's point of view? No, they're not.
No, absolutely, right. But it also drives home the point, right, of federalism, right? Like how much influence should the federal government have on implementing policies that affect the immediate localities? Because every locality is different, and the further away you get from any one specific area or another, the less tailored to that specific place that it's going to be. So I would have totally been on board, especially in a place like San Francisco, like Miami, like Seattle, like Boston. You know, to help, to implement policy that helps to slow things down, not because I don't trust the people or whatever, but because I'm trying to, I mean, you're dealing with a mass cow scenario, right? And so you're essentially trying to allocate your assets and adequately sustain whatever patients you'll have coming in. So when you're trying to do that, yeah, you have to take certain measures, and sometimes it involves implementing certain policies. But the same policies that I would put into place in a place like Seattle would not be the same policies that I should put in place in rural Wisconsin or wherever. It's like,
Yeah, it's a difficult discussion, especially to have with me, because as far as the government goes, I believe you should be able to buy a nuclear submarine with nuclear warheads off of Amazon if you want to.
yeah,
So
two way, dude. I got you.
that's my view on the
Yeah.
government. You shouldn't be restricted from doing anything. They shouldn't
Hmm.
be. So it's tough to have a description or discussion when that's my point of view on what
Sure, I
control
got
the
you.
government should have. I should be able to buy a nuke off of Amazon next day shipping if I want to.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
and that's
I
kind of
get
a
it.
crazy point of view, but I kind of keep it under wraps. But
No, I
yeah,
mean, look, like personally, I mean, I'm not saying that I necessarily disagree with you. I think that there's certainly a question. I think there's certainly a question of feasibility. Like,
oh,
oh,
it's a
how?
total, but the reason I say it like that is because it's
uh,
unrealistic. But that's
right.
my view on,
I got you.
restriction
I
of
got you.
liberties and things like that.
Yeah.
But
No, and in that regard, I get the point that you're making. If we lived in a society where the fact of the matter is, dude, we can't escape. I don't. Is it at all escapable to
no,
have zero government control over some of the left and right limits? It kind of goes back to like what we were talking about. Like if you give a private, like endless leeway, they're gonna
oh
DUI
yeah,
themselves every weekend. You know,
absolutely. But yeah,
so so
you have to have some control. There's moderation in everything. But then,
yeah,
as soon as you give control to somebody, they're going to
it
take
never
more.
ends,
They're
man.
going
They're
to
gonna take
take
more and
more.
more and more.
That's how
Yep,
we end up giving 50% of our check to the federal government. And now
that's right.
some
Yep,
guy that has $500 billion in his bank account's like, hey, I want to look around in here and see where my tax money went.
yep,
And
yeah.
people are pissed off about it. So yeah, so now we get to this point. So everything goes until people can't take it anymore. And then
Yep.
one person's like, hey, I'm not going to take this anymore. And they're in a position to do so. So we get to that.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know
Tell
what?
me
You
about
need
these
those. We got. Sorry.
Tell
What's
me
up, bro?
about these projects you got going on. We're
Oh
getting
yeah, yeah,
way
sure
off
thing, man.
track
Yeah,
here.
dude. I know. All right, man. So a couple of things, man. So I just announced this relatively recently. I'm starting a podcast. It's called the Beyond the Assessment Podcast. Pretty much what I'm doing with this in particular, like we talked about, like, dude, there's so many podcasts, but, but the goal is to try to get the word out there, man. Like, I'm trying to, the book Beyond the Assessment was pretty much laying down the framework, laying down the foundation for, more and more that I'm trying to do. This is sort of, like I said, building motivation, building that sort of like sense of like, hey, not a sense of urgency, but so much, a constant reminder of like that, that carpe diem mentality, like seize the day, get up, do a thing, make a decision that will impact your life for the better on a regular basis. You maintain and build that discipline, inevitably you're going to succeed. In the podcast, what I'm trying to do is sort of like talk about some of these like cultural aspects that we're sort of, kind of towing the line with and whatnot, talking about some of these cultural aspects, some of these political aspects, some of the things that affect veterans in particular. And I want to tailor it primarily towards veterans. But the other thing that I'm leveraging, and this is the other thing that I'm really excited to actually, I'm announcing it now first on your show, is so I just recently started a company. It's called Altivum Inc., Altivum Incorporated. And essentially what this company is going to do is it's going to take artificial intelligence and use it in order to do two things. My goal in this mission in this company is to teach veterans how to use it. Everything from like just prompt engineering to prompt engineering in different large language models. Like, for example, how to use ChatGPT, how to use Google Gemini, how to use Grok 3, all these different platforms that you can use AI in, how to leverage it to actually do a thing. The fact of the matter is, in today's day and age, all these guys that have spent so many freaking years in the military, dude, like, that is kind of a thing that people are talking about. But guys in the civilian sector, this is what they've been like their whole career has been watching this evolve into what it is now. And so to kind of even out that playing field, it's important that guys that transition out of the military get a sort of general understanding as to how to use AI appropriately. So not only with this company, what I'm trying to do is teach guys how to use the AI side of things, but I'm also trying to, and if everything goes well, what this company will end up doing is pretty much taking companies that are looking for veterans because they're out there. The fact of the matter is that it is a real demand, and I've seen it firsthand. Taking these companies and connecting them with veterans who are actually trained in using these platforms appropriately, so that they're not essentially we're cutting that teaching curve. Like what otherwise a company would have to teach on their money, on their on their end. Like, we're teaching it immediately coming out of the military. So that's the goal, man. I mean, the idea is to pretty much even the playing field through AI, because it's an inevitable technology that's here to stay, man. Like, I mean, guys, it is here to stay, and the sooner people embrace it, the better, because it's not going anywhere. But if you learn how to use it, a lot of people, they'll hit me with the whole like, oh, dude, AI is going to take my job. The fact of the matter is, AI is not going to take your job. Somebody that knows how to use AI and leverages it appropriately is going to take your job. So that's what I'm trying to do, man. Like, I'm trying to tailor the need, or cater to that need that's there, using the novel tech that's here to stay. It's ubiquitous. It is coming, and if guys aren't aware or educated on how to use it appropriately, dude, I mean, the degree to which you can accomplish tasks, productivity, so on and so forth, like all these things that like people take for granted, or like in the military, it's just kind of like, hey, 9 to 5, this is what I'm doing, bro. Like, those things are like automated in the civilian sector to a certain degree. Like, all these different tasks that in the military you're doing on like by hand are automated in the civilian sector. And if you don't know how to implement that technology into your day to day now, and how to use it to set yourself up for success, you're fighting an uphill battle, man. It is a steep one, to say the least. So suffice to say, man, the podcast is pretty much there to sort of like shed light on a lot of things that are going on, and the company is there to pretty much bridge that gap between veteran leaving the military to civilian sector, leveling the playing field through AI, teaching guys how to prompt engineer, teaching guys how to use those platforms, teaching guys how to tailor that and use it, leverage it for their benefit, and ultimately get them primed for success in whatever facet they want to engage in the civilian world. Because I mean, dude, AI is becoming more and more prominent in everything from never mind like data statisticians. Those jobs are gone. Like, no one is hiring in those job fields because computers can do that. But in the realm of healthcare, 100% is prevalent. Literally every other facet of corporate and civilian jobs, AI is everywhere. Even for small businesses, if you want to stay competitive as a small business and you're not leveraging the the increased time and productivity that AI enables, dude, you're gonna get run over, man. Like if you don't automate a lot of those menial tasks, it's you're gonna go by the wayside and it's gonna fall out. So the goal with this company is called, like I said, it's called Altivum Inc. I'm launching the website within the next couple of days, but it's already a formalized corporation recognized by the state of Tennessee. It's pretty much to do that, man. Is to take veterans that are leaving the military, teach them the skill set that they need through AI, and ultimately set them up for success so that they can use that skill set in the civilian world. So I'm excited about that stuff, man. I like AI a lot. I intend on getting more and more involved into what's called AIM, so artificial intelligence in medicine. That's kind of where I want to gear my personal development, and my ultimate focus is on that, because that is going to change the field of medicine in ways that are otherwise unimaginable. But it's fun, man. It's fun to be on that frontier of novelty and incoming tech.
It sounds like you're fucking excited about it, man. That's
Dude,
good.
I'm stoked, man. I'm
You're
stoked. Yeah.
all in.
It's
I mean, and the AI is really going to it's going to make the generational gap bigger, right? Unfortunately,
oh yeah.
because I don't understand things that somebody 5 years younger than me does, that 5 years
Mhm,
younger than them, and so on
mhm.
down the road, that the gaps are going to get so much bigger. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really going to have I think, a negative effect on the senior elder statesman sort of positions, right? Of like
Yeah, dude.
sticking to
Yeah.
the status quo. Because the farther more entrenched you are, the more you're going to stick to what you have been doing,
Right.
and that's going to be demise. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that, but you are right. It's here to stay, and unless you see mushroom clouds in the sky
Yeah.
off on the horizon, it's not
Yeah,
going
dude.
anywhere anytime soon. But
Yeah, man. So if I may, dude, like I encourage guys, especially once I launch the website, like I'm gonna put it out there on my social media. My Instagram in particular, it's ChrisGray0321. So if guys follow me on there, they'll definitely be aware of like what's going on. And the podcast, like I said, is called the Beyond the Assessment Podcast, where we'll be talking a lot about those different things. But once I launch that website, man, one of the things that I'm looking for in particular is veterans who are inclined to get a 1 day actually entirely free, not like, hey, dude, it's free. And when you get there, it's like, actually, there's no, it's a literal 1 day course. I'm like, hey, it's more like beta testing. Hey, this is what we're trying to put out. And if you're interested, do you find value in this, et cetera, et cetera? Like that kind of thing. So once I put it out there, man, like the more guys that we can get for that 1 day course, the better. That way we get a real picture of like whether or not guys see value in it, and whether or not like they think like it's something that is applicable to their day to day, or something that they can actually use. Because at the end of the day, like my goal is not to force an idea to become a thing, but rather to find a need and create, to bridge the gap, between
yeah,
between the need and the have. So yeah, I mean, hopefully, like I encourage guys to definitely do that, and I'll make sure that'll definitely be out there. If they follow me on Instagram, ChrisGray0321, like they'll be very well aware as to like how things are progressing in that regard, and when things go live, how to sign up. But yeah, actually, it's actually a free 1 day course to gauge how impactful the course work that we're developing actually is. But suffice to say, man, yeah, dude, I'm super stoked about it, man. Like I've gone like full deep dive into AI, and not because it's just like a niche, it's like the novelty of it all, but like, dude, it's evolved so much, and it's been around for a lot longer than people think. Like AI, I think I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's a company called Deep Blue. It was around in '97 when it beat like one of like the grand masters in chess.
hmm,
Like, I mean, pretty like that's a while back, '97. So you can imagine it. Okay, so AI is beating chess players back then in '97. Where's it at now? I mean, the fact of the matter is like it's in many ways it's indistinguishable from another human being. You know?
oh yeah, the Turing test was 10 years ago. It was the Turing test, but now everything passes that. You're
Yeah,
right; it's
man. Yeah,
indistinguishable.
yeah.
We'll see. It's probably gonna reshape the world, as they say, just like Ozempic or whatever.
Bro, the number of people that are suddenly on Ozempic, dude, it is mind-boggling. mind-boggling, man. And it's just like it's such a typical, just like Western culture, easy button, just like yeah, just it blows my mind, man. I'm not saying that there aren't people who actually need it and who find benefit in it, but I'm just saying there's a lot of people who would just benefit from just a little bit of discipline, just a little bit of just consistency in their workouts would that's all.
I
That's
can
that's all you
talk
need
I can
sometimes.
talk both sides of the argument for
Yeah.
better, for worse. The major downside is it will you will lose muscle at the same rate you lose fat. So you won't be any healthier. You'll just
Hmm.
actually be more unhealthy. Yes, you'll weigh less, but you'll be
Yeah.
more unhealthy and you'll
Yeah.
have the
Interesting.
same body composition, but you'll lose muscle and fat. So if you're
Yeah.
not taking in your target body weight of grams of protein per day while you're on it and strength training 3 times a week, you're just going to be more unhealthy when you go on it. So there is a
Bro,
benefit for it. There is a benefit
sure.
for it. But
But you see, but it goes back to that underlying premise, right? It's like you have to have a good routine with your diet. You have to have a good routine with your workouts. Like, God damn it, I don't know what the hell that is. You have to establish these routines because without it, I mean, it doesn't matter what you take. I mean, even guys, like whatever guys taking TRT, all these different things, but like if their diet is absolute garbage, like it's still not going to make the the aesthetic changes that you may want it to make. Yeah, you're going to get some benefits from it, but you're not going to get the ultimate result as to what you would perhaps get if you were disciplined in your diet and your working out and your sleep and all these. It takes effort, no matter what. It takes effort, dedication, discipline. You can't escape that.
that's why some people rise to the top and some people don't, man. It's all
That's it, man. That's
discipline
it.
and
But it's
motivation.
yeah, it's day to
Hey,
day, brother.
I got 5 questions for you and then we'll wrap this up. How's that sound?
Send the dip.
What is your response to thank you for your service?
Thank you for your service. So my immediate response is thank you for your support. That's my immediate, like whenever somebody says, "Hey, thank you for service," I'm like, you know what? Thank you for your support, brother. I appreciate it. Like that's my immediate response all the time. I generally err on the side of just like immediately hitting that reverse card on you because they're doing it because it's like it's nice, but at the same time, I'm like, hey, you know what? It's nice that you're being nice. So that's my immediate response.
I go with it was an honor. It really was. That's what I go with. It
Hell
was.
yeah.
I mean, it really was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
was an
yeah, yeah.
honor
I
to be in
got
the
you. Yeah,
military,
dude. Hell
and
yeah.
I heard that right when I got out, and I just snatched that one up. I said, I'm going to steal that
I
one.
like that. Yeah.
Um, you know, you ask some people, they go, "Oh, I don't, fuck, I don't have a."
I
You
didn't
got to
do
have you got to
anything.
have a
Yeah.
response set for that,
100%.
even if
Yeah.
because people are trying to be respectful, and you got to have the correct response. So,
For sure. Yeah, that's my
what
go-to. So,
is the one characteristic that sets operators apart from conventional forces?
tenacity. So, I really think it's just yeah, dude. It's just that relentless, like no matter fucking what. Like I've never seen it anywhere else, man. I've never seen it anywhere else. I mean, and I know it exists in the conventional force, but like, you know what? I would even let me hold on. Let me take a second. Let me take a second here because it's a good question. It's a good question. And before I just kind of jump the gun and answer some, I do think tenacity is an aspect, but what sets them apart, I think it's being able to put it in kind of like in group words, being able to operate in the gray, right? A lot of what I saw in like the regular army and like in my National Guard experience is like AR-670-1 says this, therefore we do not break what AR-670-1 says ever. Like the rules are this, and so we follow up. I think SF guys know when those rules can be bent, to what extent they can be bent before you're compromising your moral compass. And answering, well, first of all, asking and answering the why to certain things. You know, it's like regular army oftentimes is because I was told to do so. Group guys, I feel like operating that gray is asking why and understanding the why you do the thing that you do. That's a more thought out. Right? Like, let me take a second and really answer what you're asking
I like that. That works. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, but you come back in
me.
20 minutes, that motherfucker will be naked. What is the one moment of your career that you wish you could go back and relive?
All my career, I wish I could go back and relive. That's a good one, man. I think I have to bring it back to the one that I read about, dude. Is getting handed that piece of paper that says selected. I mean, bro, like that. It is an indescribable feeling, man. You feel like you feel like you've accomplished the world, like you've accomplished so much, and at the same time, you also feel like the possibilities are immediately endless. Like it's just, whoa, like you've done, yeah. That is a crux, like that is just a crux in my life. A moment in time wherein I truly feel like I accomplished something, and there are infinite possibilities all at the same time. That would have to be it.
I agree. That was a moment in mine where I think about a lot, like a
Really.
lot. Yeah. And I knew what the cadre was going to say to me, and he knew that I knew that he knew too. So he was kind of like, he's like, you little shit, you know.
Yeah.
He, because he wanted to be a dick to me and he couldn't because I knew and he knew, and I was like, just give me the paper, man.
Yeah.
What's the best piece of advice that you received during your career?
Dude, the best piece. I mean, dude. I talk about it all the time, and it's what I live by, man. Control. Like I had a cadre member tell me this. I wish I could remember his name. Control the controllables, influence the variables. That has stuck with me from that moment. He said that to me. From then on, man, it really hit home because it really simplified the reality of the decision making, the scope of how much you can actually impact on a day to day. That's it. That's it. It just simplifies it to the nth degree. I can control what I can. I can influence everything else. But it does. But it's twofold, right? So it was advice that reinforced my agency. Because a lot more often than not, man, what you end up finding is guys who feel like they're just victims to their circumstances, and as soon as you fall into that trap, the next step after that is losing hope.
Mm.
And as soon as you lose hope, what else do you have? If you're hopeless, what else do you have? If you think that there's absolutely no escape, what else do you have? So that piece of advice, like I said, reinforced my agency and my free will, and that I am in fact in control of a lot of what goes on around me. And if I don't have immediate control over it, at the very least, I can influence it. But again, the onus, because it still falls on me to a degree. It falls on me. It keeps you tethered to reality in that there are certain things that you cannot control in their entirety. However, you can in some way, shape, or form influence. I mean, dude, you can any one person could walk out right now, walk out there and do. I'm not saying do this. It's not a call to action, but any one person can walk out the door and do something that will change their lives forever immediately. You know, like they can. But that's the reality of the world that we live in, and how much we can actually impact as an individual. Like you can, but if you don't believe it or you don't come to terms with it, and I mean, you just kind of go through life in that victim mentality. That's just not a way to live, in my opinion. And so that was the best advice that I was given: control the controllables, influence the variables.
Yeah, well, that's just like a winner's mentality, right? This saying to yourself, there's nothing completely out of my control.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So you put yourself in the best. Oh, that's what the better you are, the luckier you look, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Yep.
But all
Yep.
that all that getting better comes with hundreds, if not thousands, of repetitions of practice.
100%. 100%. 100%.
All right. Last one. What were
So
you afraid of then, and what are you afraid of now?
that's a good one. What was I afraid of then? Then as in group, or then as in when exactly?
In your service, in your time in the service.
Okay, my time's okay. I think in my time in service, I was one of my biggest fears was being subpar or inadequate. And I don't mean like not I don't mean like not fitting in, but I mean like not being able to do my job, letting somebody down, like someone dying because I didn't take the time to prepare. So having to carry that weight, it would have I think it would have destroyed me. If my inadequacies and my ineptitude was a reason why someone lost their life, would have been horrific and very difficult to live with. What I'm afraid of now is doing that to my son, not being sufficient, or not sufficiency, but not being someone that he looks up to, someone that he can look to and say, "That's my hero. That's who I want to emulate. That's who I want to be like. That's someone that I aspire to follow his footsteps to." Not in lockstep, but at the very least, you know, emulate the characteristics that have led me to success, or at the very least influence him in a positive manner. If I can't do that, then I would feel like an absolute failure. So that's my biggest fear. I think all in all that could be wrapped into fear of failure at doing the thing that I'm entrusted to doing. But if I had to paint or illustrate a more accurate depiction of what that would look like, it would have been my time in the service, being insufficiently prepared to do my job to such a degree that it would cost someone their life. And in my position now, as a father and a husband, it's it's not setting the example, not setting the standard to a degree where my son would look at me and say, "I don't want to be like that."
Good benchmark, because now this is going to go up on the internet and your son will be old enough someday to hear you say that answer. So it's a good
Yeah, man.
position to set for yourself, a goal to that's the that's where the buck stops, right? That's where
That's
I'm going
it.
to work forward from.
That's it.
Well, man,
That's it, bro.
I really appreciate you coming on the show. I think we had a good discussion there. Let's run through everything again here for
Sure,
the
sure.
folks that are still listening at this point. Books, names of your companies, and all of your socials will be in the show description at the top.
Sweet
So
deal.
run them off for me here real quick.
Awesome. Yeah. So the book is called Beyond the Assessment. It is available on Amazon, and it's also available on my website. That's www.beyondtheassessment.com. The podcast will be on YouTube and will also be on Rumble. It's the Beyond the Assessment podcast. My socials, pretty much every single one of them, is Chris Gray 0321. That's Chris CHRIS Gray GREY 0321, and that's everything from Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Discord, pretty much X. I'm trying to gain more of a, or get more of a footstep in X right now, and that's an interesting platform to be on for sure. You want to talk about a lot of political and cultural opinions. Holy smokes, that is the cesspool of it all there, dude. Jeez
No, I
Louise,
don't.
but
I'm having a hard enough
it's
time
there.
with YouTube and
Yeah.
Instagram and Spotify at the moment.
Dude, yeah. Oh, yeah, dude. But yeah, suffice to say, man, Beyond the Assessment, beyondtheassessment.com. The company is called Altivum Inc. That website will also be dropping soon. That's going to be altivum.io. I own the domain for that already, so it'll be altivum.io. Once that website drops, I will put it all over my social media. Everybody will know. But yeah, man, I mean, I hope your listeners enjoyed our conversation. I'm sure they did. I mean, it was absolute, like an absolute honor meeting you, man. It was great. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. And yeah, I mean, pick up the book, check out the website, follow me, watch the podcast, and I hope I get to see some of your followers. Like whenever whenever I launch that course, I hope to hear a couple of guys who are like, "Yeah, dude, I watched you on the podcast," and yeah, here I am. That'd be sick.
That's what it's all about, man. The base of this show will always be, if you were a soft guy, you can come on the show and plug whatever you want to do. As long as you sit here and talk to me for a few hours, you can talk about
Hell
whatever the
yeah,
fuck
dude.
else you want to do. I don't care how unknown you are or how famous you are, you can send me a message and we will record a show. I
That's
promise
awesome.
you. That
That's
is the
awesome, bro.
base. Long format shows for the soft guys or gals could come on here no matter what.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in that, man. You like the number of guys that are willing to use their platform to elevate other dudes, few and far between, man. Few and far between. So, like I said, man, I genuinely appreciate it, man. It is, it is not a lot of people out there that are willing to use their platform to help other guys up. So, thank you for that.
I've gotten nothing but support from the rest of the regiment and everybody else in SOF, so I am not going to turn anybody away. And I'm just a little fish right now, but I am going to fucking burn this down and try and build this as big as I can. And like I said,
Hell yeah, bro.
I will have all of your links and your socials at the top of the show description. I end all the shows the same way. Christian, you got anything for me?
Nothing, brother. It's been a pleasure. It really has. Seriously, thank you so much.
I appreciate you. Bye, everybody.